Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Iron Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Quirk Fusing All for One. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. It was late at night when All for One silently left a nondescript office building on the outskirts of the city, far later than the man would have liked to leave. He might be a nearly 200-year-old overpowered villain, but a good night's sleep could not be replaced by anything. He felt his joints crack as he walked down the street, suddenly grateful for the warper he had on standby, and quickly summoned Kurogiri to warp him a few streets away from his home. The dark shadows of the poorly lit side street were an important factor in his post-work routine. The location was perfect for several different crimes to occur. Residents tended to avoid the street after dark, and it wasn't too outlandish for an airhead office worker to use this street to arrive home sooner. A perfect spot, really. All for One removed his headgear quickly, happily inhaling the clean, unfiltered air. By the time the notorious villain emerged from the shadowy alley, he was no longer the nightmare of the underworld, but rather the kind, loving, hard-working Shigaraki Hisashi, husband to the woman of his dreams, father to two perfect boys, a common man through and through. Finally in front of his home, Hisashi noted the time, late enough for his family to be asleep, and opened the front door as silently as possible. Using a stealth quirk made it easy to remove his shoes and walk further into the house without waking anyone up. After poking his head into everyone's rooms just to make sure his family was safe and sound, Hisashi made his way into his home office. This office was not All for One's, no record of any illegal activity was kept here, but it was definitely Shigaraki's. Photos of his wife and sons on the walls, his various university degrees on display. Having such a long life made it easy to master the art of the doctorate, and he was an esteemed alum of several prestigious universities. Childhood drawings kept safe in picture frames, and his most prized possession tucked away safely on the bookshelf. Inside, an indestructible safe hidden behind unassuming psychology books. The thought of his treasure tugged on Shigaraki's mind, unable to resist the familiar pull. It was similar to when he saw a particularly interesting quirk, the instinct to have, take, hold, possess, and cultivate driving him to approach the hidden safe and open it. He would have to open it sometime soon anyway. He had new pieces to add to this treasure after all, and he enjoyed the silence of the house while working on his masterpiece. Unlike the silence of his office, where people feared a single squeak disturbing him, the quiet at home felt warm, inviting, comforting, safe, something that Shigaraki had not felt in several decades. And this treasure was a vessel to contain all of his treasures, like nothing else he had ever possessed. Truly, if a foolish thief managed to break through his state-of-the-art security system and steal it, he would not hesitate to burst out of his shadowy throne of the underworld and raze cities to the ground until he found it. His fierce need to stow it away was not unlike the way stories spoke of dragons, hoarding away their treasures, meticulously keeping watch over their possessions so no one would dare touch. Hisashi chuckled softly, the irony of the situation ever present. If only his enemies knew the secret to pull the notorious All for One out of the shadows was contained in a scrapbook. A scrapbook. He could see it clearly in his mind's eye. All Might, upon discovering that his archenemy's greatest weakness was a scrapbook, would be so shocked that he would retire instantly, passing on his quirk to someone far easier to steal it from. Like hell that blonde idiot would ever discover his treasure, Shigaraki scoffed. He would be dead before coming within a 500-meter radius of it. He smacked his cheek lightly. Thoughts of All Might had no place near his precious scrapbook, and gently opened the laminated pages, sliding in a few new photos and writing a brief note in the margins. He couldn't resist the urge to flip through the slowly yellowing pages, smiling softly at the memories contained within. Babies first. What started out as a baby milestones book had become so much more as the years went by, a reminder of his goals, his reason for all of his work, all of it to craft the perfect future for his family. Who knew that a seemingly simple baby shower gift would come to mean so much to the scourge of the underworld? If someone told Tamura a year ago that he would get his quirk, accidentally kill his family, be taken in by a new and nicer family, get a new name and a baby brother, He would have thought he had finally lost his mind to his father's abuse. Yet here he was, sitting in the living room of his new home, less than a year after developing his destructive quirk, waiting for his new mom and sensei, he wasn't comfortable with fatherly names yet, to come back from the hospital. At first, he was worried that mom was sick. He didn't think he could bear losing another mom, especially one that was so kind to him. But sensei explained that mom wasn't sick, her belly had been growing a lot because there was a baby in there. Tamura had asked how the baby got stuck in there, but sensei said that didn't matter. The important thing was that Tamura's baby brother was going to be coming out soon. Tamura hadn't had a baby brother before, only a big sister that wasn't very nice. But sensei and mom had been teaching him how to be a good big brother. All of that led to Tamura patiently sitting on the couch, Kurogyari standing next to him as usual, somewhat paying attention to the show on the TV while waiting for his family to come back from the hospital where his baby brother was being born. My family, he gulped at the thought, a real family that likes me and doesn't hit me or yell at me or get me in trouble. It seemed too good to be true, like he was just sleeping and having an incredibly realistic dream, and the idea of it being fake made his skin itch ferociously. He didn't even notice he had tried to scratch his tender neck until Kurogyari gently pushed his hand down, instead turning his nervous energy onto his gloves, twisting and pulling at the fabric. The gloves were another sign that his new family loved him, a gift from mom after she comforted Tamura during a meltdown, after he had accidentally decayed a chair and promptly started sobbing, refusing to touch anyone or anything lest he destroy it all over again. She spoke kindly to him while he cried, accepting his aversion to touch. Later that day, she presented him with special gloves, made of different materials with a few fingers cut off, so that his fear of his own hands would be calmed. And they'll come in handy when your baby brother is born. Mom had said, taking special care to slide the gloves on his shaky hands. Babies like being held, especially by their big brothers, and you won't need to be worried about accidentally decaying him if you have these on. Although I do believe that one day, you'll learn how to control your quirk so you can choose what gets decayed. Tamura didn't cry at his mom's soft words, no matter what anyone else claimed happened, and he didn't feel like crying right now either. He wasn't worried that his mom wouldn't come back and sensei would get angry. The rattling of the doorknob interrupted his spiraling thoughts, and the familiar sound of sensei's voice calling for him had Tamura racing to the front door, desperate to see his mom safe. Except, mom wasn't at the door, it was only sensei. Sensei, Tamura's voice was shaking. Where's mom? Is she okay? Did something bad happen? Is baby brother here yet? I promise you that she's fine, Tamura. Sensei's calm and steady voice was like a lifeline to the nervous boy. The baby was born safely and she's fine, but they need to stay at the hospital for a little while since the doctors need to monitor their health. She's very tired, but she would like to see you and introduce the baby to you. The baby. Baby brother. Tamura's baby brother. The next months went by in a blur. Meeting baby brother for the first time in the hospital, he looked just like mom. Baby brother coming home for the first time, his happy giggles filling the home. His influence was everywhere in Tamura's life and he couldn't be happier. He loved his baby brother from the moment he laid eyes on him, and he was making sure to live up to his promise of being the best big brother ever. He was just as excited as his parents to see baby brother's growth. From his first steps to his first birthday, Tamura was right next to his brother, encouraging him every step of the way. Which was why mom and sensei's concerned whispers made him nervous. He wasn't supposed to be awake, but he had gotten thirsty and was going to the kitchen for some water when he heard them talking in sensei's office, slowing down to make sure everything was all right. He's already a year old, Hisashi. Most sources I've read say they've already said their first word by now. What if something's wrong? Tamura decided they must be talking about baby brother, since everyone else that Tamura knew was way older than just 1 year. The doctor said it's not unusual for a baby to not speak at his age. Garaki advised us to pay attention to him, just to make sure he's babbling. If he's not, then we can start to worry about something being wrong. Baby brother was supposed to talk? Since when do babies know how to talk? I know, mom sighed. I just can't help but be worried. He's our first baby. I mean, Tamura is just as much our son as Izuku, but this is our first experience with a baby. What if I mess it up somehow? What if something is really not okay and I don't notice it? What if Inko, Sensei interrupted Mom's tangent. We aren't doing anything to intentionally harm Izuku. Every parent makes mistakes, but all we can do is our best to give him a happy childhood. If we focus on all we could do wrong, we won't have energy or time left to do anything right. Oh, Hisashi. You always know just what to say to calm me down. Well, I do my best in everything dash. And it sounds like you read plenty of parenting books to come up with that one. Mom laughed while Sensei spluttered out half-hearted protests. If Izuku inherits your intelligence, he'll say his first word in no time. So baby brother was supposed to start talking. Tamura tiptoed away from the door, already thinking up a storm. If baby brother was supposed to talk, then maybe he just needed some exposure to learn how. Yes, he was going to help baby brother learn how to talk. That would definitely make Mom and Sensei not worry. Tamura swiftly put his plan into motion, following all the steps he had come up with so far. He knew from his video game about raising puppies that they only learned words when you repeated them all the time, and the first word you teach them is their name, so it must work the same way with a baby brother. After all, a puppy and a baby brother are pretty similar, right? The point was, Tamura had been speaking to baby brother a lot more lately, always calling the little green child baby brother, and himself Nichan, remembering that was how his game dogs had learned, and he was pleased to hear baby brother making lots of noises in response to him. That must be the babbling Mom had mentioned. It also helped that baby brother loved being around Tamura, whining and getting fussy when he wasn't around his big brother all the time, which meant more time for Tamura to teach him the two most important things. His name is baby brother, and Tamura's name is Nichan. Today, however, Tamura wasn't focused on teaching baby brother the right names. No, he was standing up for baby brother's right to breakfast. Mom, Tamura said, baby brother should get to eat cereal. Tamura, your brother isn't old enough for cereal yet. It's too tough on his teeth. But Mom, I smelled baby brother's food and even tasted some, and it's nasty. Baby brother deserves things that taste good, or else he won't eat and he'll stay tiny forever. Tamura huffed, pointedly ignoring the voice in his head that said a forever tiny baby brother would be cute, putting his hands on his hips as he debated with Mom. In fact, both parties were so absorbed in the debate, they had momentarily forgotten the subject of the debate was sitting across the room in his high chair, staring at them with as much malice as a baby could while holding his green rabbit plushie in an impressive chokehold. Izuku was, by all means, a well-behaved baby, but being denied something would send any baby into a sulking fit. At the moment, Izuku wanted nothing more than to be coddled by two of his favorite people, both of whom were ignoring him in favor of talking with each other. He didn't particularly know exactly what they were arguing about, but it was taking their attention away from him. He was supposed to be getting hugs and kisses and the mushy stuff he eats, not being ignored. He had begun waving his arms and making all kinds of noises to try and get them to notice him, but it still wasn't working. He tried going over to them, but this awful chair contraption he was put in every morning kept him locked in. He even tried escaping twice, but couldn't figure out how to be released from his prison. He was getting very frustrated with the lack of attention, and that wouldn't do at all. Izuku puffed up his cheeks, rearing the hand holding Green Bunny back, and locked his eyes onto the side of the young boy's head before throwing the toy across the room, smacking him directly in the side of his face. Fakish. And I-chan. The sound that came out of Izuku's mouth was new, but it felt right. Maybe that was the other boy's name. Just like his name is Izuku and baby brother. Not to mention, the new sound made Mom and Nichan turn around, jaws hanging wide open and locking their eyes on the proud baby. Baby brother! Tamura shouted, little legs running over to the high chair. Baby brother said a word. Inko warbled, one hand over her heart and the other fumbling with the phone in her pocket. That's your first word. You said your first word. I'm his first word. Tamura exclaimed, gently yet eagerly grabbing the baby's hands. Say it again. Call me Nichan again. Izuku smiled, happy to finally be getting the attention he deserved, sliding one of his hands out of Tamura's grip and mushing it against the boy's nose. Nichan. Why, that's me. I'm Nichan. Tamura turned to his mom with a wide grin on his face, not noticing the phone in her hand or the tears in her eyes. Look, Mom. I trained him just like I train my dogs in my game. Now he knows my name. He turned back to Izuku and pointed to their mom. Baby brother. She is mom. Call her mom. Izuku's nose scrunched in concentration, staring at her intensely. Mama. Oh, Izuku. That's right, I'm Mama. Inko said, openly crying while doing something with her phone. Tamura nodded, satisfaction written all over his face. Not quite Mom, but I just need to train you some more until you get it right. Nichan. Mama. Izuku cheered, happy with the attention and happy to press his hand against Nichan's face. He wanted Mama over here too, but the little box in her hand made a noise that took her attention away. If only he had another green bunny to throw, it worked last time. Where's my little baby boy? A loud voice said, and oh, Izuku knows this voice. It's the man that stays with Mama and Nichan and likes to give Izuku warm hugs. His name is Dada. The tall man fell to his knees, crying about something while Mama went over and hugged him. Izuku didn't pay that much attention though. Nichan had returned Green Bunny to his hands and Izuku was happy to repay him by chanting Nichan over and over again. It made Nichan smile and free Izuku from the chair trap, and Izuku was very pleased to finally be getting his morning hugs. In fact, Izuku was having so much fun hugging Nichan and saying his name, he totally ignored his parents snapping hundreds of photos of their sons. Inko, what exactly was his first word? Hisashi said, his phone several photos heavier. His wife smiled at him. Well, would you believe me if I said it was Nichan? Hisashi exhaled in a way that Inko knew was laughter, squeezing Inko's shoulders while admiring the way Tamura played with Izuku. We're so lucky to have such wonderful sons, Inko sighed. We are, Hisashi couldn't help but agree, taking one last look at the photos he had taken before making his way over to the boys. The scene in front of him tugged at his heart in a way he hadn't felt in hundreds of years. It made him want to preserve the moment forever, safely locked away where he could reminisce as much as he liked. But how to preserve the memory? Maybe a quirk? No, he wanted something more personal, something like, Inko? Do we still have that little book from your baby shower? The baby's first one? There's something I'd like to do with it. Bonding with baby brother is quite hard, Tamura decided. It's not that he doesn't want to spend time with him, it's that he doesn't know how. Baby brother isn't even a year old yet, he can only crawl and take a few shaky steps before falling down, and he definitely can't play games with Tamura. His tiny hands can't even hold his smallest controller, and he keeps trying to eat them instead of play the game. Realistically, Tamura knows that he does have some kind of a bond with baby brother since they do spend a lot of time together. He lets baby brother hold his fingers to practice walking, he hugs baby brother all the time, he lets baby brother take naps next to him, but none of those activities are really fun. Logically, the best alternative to games is watching TV. If baby brother's baby shows weren't so boring that nothing interesting is even happening, it's just repeating numbers and colors over and over again. Where's the plot? The drama? The rival? There wasn't even a tournament arc, and everyone knows that all self-respecting shows have to have a tournament arc. How's baby brother going to learn anything actually important if he's just learning how to count all day long? No, this wouldn't do at all. Tamura wouldn't just sit idly by knowing that he could be guiding his brother down a better path. Big brothers are supposed to help their baby brothers train their skills and find their main quest. But first, he needed to figure out what baby brother's main skill is. Luckily, he knew the perfect way to do just that. A quick glance showed that baby brother was still enraptured by his stupid educational show, allowing Tamura to dash into his room and grab the tools for the test. It was simple really, all baby brother had to do was crawl towards his choice, and he had gotten really good at crawling lately. The simplicity didn't mean the test was easy though. Baby brother's choice would affect his entire life, even if he didn't know it yet. This test would show Tamura what his ability type is and how good he was at making important choices. He carefully placed the items behind baby brother, making sure they were evenly spread out before poking baby brother's chubby cheek. He turned to face Tamura with a large smile on his face, practically glowing at the sight of his big brother, making Tamura feel a surge of pride at being the source of his happiness. Baby brother, he began, turning down the abomination baby brother considered a show. Today is a very important day for you. Baby brother responded by making a squeaky noise and falling onto Tamura's leg, which he decided to interpret as, "A very important day? I love important days with Nichan. I can't wait to see how cool my Nichan is. Yes, it's a very important day. You have a choice to make today, and it's gonna change everything." Tamura turned baby brother around, standing in front of him so he couldn't see the items on the ground. "Today, you're going to make a decision that will start you on a very important journey to build your team. How you battle will be different depending on the choice you make. Baby brother, it's time to choose your first Pokemon." He stepped to the side, finally allowing baby brother to see what was laying on the ground. 3 plushies, each one a different type of the starter Pokemon: fire, water, and grass type. Baby brother's eyes sparkling at the sight of the toys was confirmation that Tamura had properly raised him to be a baby gamer, and it had him smirking smugly while holding the baby in place. "Just go and grab the starter you want, but remember that whatever you choose will impact your gameplay." Tamura began to ramble, grip on his brother loosening as he got lost in his lecture. "You'll get different moves for each one. They all have different weaknesses to other types, and some of them are more optimized for gym battles." He finally stepped away from his brother, sitting behind the row of plushies and holding out his arms. "Alright, baby brother, choose your Pokemon." Tamura watched his brother with unblinking eyes, taking in every move the baby made as he slowly crawled forward. Tamura just knew that baby brother would make a good choice, and that choice would be the water or grass type. He respected fire types, he really did, but the fire starter was the weakest option. It took way longer to learn stronger moves, and it was weak to 3 whole gyms. The water and grass types were weak to only 2 gyms each. Tamura snapped out of his game strategy-induced haze at the feeling of something small hitting his stomach. Looking down showed that baby brother had bypassed all of the toys in favor of bashing his head against Tamura and was now smiling up at him while chewing on Tamura's gloved thumb. "No, baby brother, you have to pick a starter." Tamura chided, picking up the green-haired infant and returning him to his starting point. "And don't bite my gloves. I don't want to accidentally decay you." He gently set his brother down, pointing at each of the toys while taking his seat. "Pick your starter. Then I can teach you all about it." Eyes shining at the mention of being taught by Tamura, not that Tamura could blame him. His lectures about games were legendary. Baby brother finally started crawling forward, eyes darting between the 3 choices. Tamura's heart was pounding, his hands curling into excited fists, not even breathing for fear of breaking baby brother's concentration. "Come on," Tamura thought, "pick the water type. Then you can team up with my grass type and we can take over the region faster." Baby brother turned away from the grass type, crawling towards the water and fire type instead. Tamura felt his heart soar. Baby brother would pick water. They could make the perfect team when he picks water. Everything was going to be perfect. Except everything wasn't perfect, because baby brother reached across the water type and grabbed the fire type. Tamura felt his knees give out and he crashed to the ground not a moment later, his jaw hanging open and hands shaking furiously. He wanted to protest, wanted to say that baby brother just made a mistake, but baby brother had the whole-grain sugar-free audacity to smile at Tamura like he should be pleased by his choice. Like he could be happy with it. "The fire type is only effective against 1 gym." "Baby brother," Tamura stammered, reaching out to grab the offending plushie. "Why, you only chose it because you don't know the game yet. I'll teach you." "Yeah, there's a show about it that'll show you the right choice to make." Tamura ran for the TV remote. The stupid baby show was way less important than baby brother's education, and quickly sat baby brother down next to him for a day full of learning the important things in life, lecturing him about strategy and game mechanics while letting the anime play. After a solid 2 hours of watching the show, and mom coming in to change baby brother's diaper while telling Tamura TV time was over, Tamura just knew that baby brother had finally learned why the fire type wasn't the best choice, and he decided to try the starter test again. Quickly placing the toys on the ground and lifting baby brother from the couch, Tamura took his spot behind the plushies once more. "Okay, baby brother, you get to try this one more time. Show me that your training paid off." Baby brother crawled forward at an agonizing pace, carefully observing each of the plushies. Tamura just knew that he would pick the right one this time. He's the best teacher there is. But when baby brother made a beeline for the fire type again, Tamura collapsed on the floor, wailing in defeat as he pulled his knees up to his chest. Baby brother had picked wrong again. How could Tamura try to guide baby brother if he can't even teach him something as easy as Pokemon? That was the scene Hisashi came upon after returning from work, Tamura sobbing in the fetal position, stuffed animals strewn about the room, and Izuku patting his big brother's face while chewing on a plushie. Tamura? What's wrong? Hisashi trailed off, finally realizing what the toys all had in common. Oh, Tamura. Did you have Izuku pick a starter Pokemon? The older boy sobbed harder, not stopping even when Izuku threw himself on top of him in some semblance of a hug, cries rising in severity once again when his baby brother offered his new chew toy to Tamura in an attempt to comfort him. Hisashi knew that he should step in to calm his oldest son, but he found himself snapping a quick photo and trying to hide a laugh at the situation. It was just like Tamura to work himself into a fit after failing to introduce his baby brother to a game. But Hisashi was a good father, and he put his phone away to gather the sobbing child into his arms. After eventually calming Tamura down and reassuring him, Hisashi found himself sandwiched between his sons on the couch, watching Pokemon while Tamura once again attempted to explain game mechanics to a baby. Sure, he should explain that Izuku wouldn't be able to retain any of this information, but telling Tamura that at this point would hurt more than Izuku's accidental betrayal. Besides, it was absolutely adorable to hear a 5-year-old's attempt at a serious lecture, and he had several dozen new photos to back that up. Maybe he should get the photos printed. They would undoubtedly come in handy when the boys were older. All for one liked to keep his work and home life separated, like cats and dogs, oil and water, all might and a functioning brain cell. He had personal reasons for it, such as his villain persona being a bit too intimidating for his family to see, but it was mostly a safety precaution. If anyone that had a bone to pick with him found out about his little family, they would all have targets on their backs and have to go into hiding. That was why the only subordinates to have ever seen his wife and sons were Kurogyari and Dr. Garaki. The others were nowhere near the level of trust needed to even know he had a family, let alone see them. Master? I don't mean to impose, but why exactly are there children here? Which was why he was currently debating whether it would be detrimental to kill every single minion that was staring at his sleeping sons. He didn't necessarily want his children to be at this meeting, but Inko had been very busy with work lately, and the boys had come down with heavy colds. The boys were awfully clingy when sick, Izuku especially, who would cry if either of his parents wasn't immediately in his sight, and Hisashi had noticed that they slept much better when able to cuddle up against him. Seeing as their mother was unable to be with them due to her job, and Hisashi would never force his wife to give up her work, he took it upon himself to care for his boys. Unfortunately, he had meetings to attend that day. No, he had not forgotten about them, and made the difficult decision to bring the children along with him. They were currently asleep, one in each arm, wrapped up in their softest blankets and onesies. All for one stared at the unfortunate soul that dared to speak, eyes boring into the man's skull. Is it a problem for them to be present? He asked, a dangerous edge in his tone. Are you so weak that you are unable to focus on your tasks at hand in the face of the slightest change in environment? Of course not, master, the man continued, but it doesn't seem wise to have children present during business meetings. If he hadn't had decades of practice keeping his expressions neutral, all for one's face would have shifted to express annoyance and anger. Luckily for him, and unluckily for those present, his aura was suffocating enough to let everyone know that he was less than pleased. Pray tell, why exactly do you believe that I am unwise to allow children to be present, children, might I add, who are doing nothing but sleeping? At least the peon has the decency to look nervous when he stammered out a response. What if they wake up? Our topics aren't exactly child-friendly, and you know how kids can't keep their mouths shut. They'll blab to the first person they see about any plans they overhear. I assure you, all for one snarled through his clenched jaw, they will not be fully awake to understand or keep any information discussed today. Even if they do, they know better than to share anything with anyone outside of their home. But master, all for one had to remind himself of his promise to not murder anyone in the presence of his children as the minion made the genius decision to actually whine. Those children are hindering our progress. You won't even put them down to approve documents. What's so important about them anyway? All for One's gaze was downright murderous, and the silent peons in the room shivered at the sudden drop in temperature. These children, he began, voice low and cold, are the heirs to my empire. You would do well to show them as much respect as you show me. Master, they can't possibly be your heirs. They're just Dash. Dad, a raspy voice broke through the peons shouting, he's too loud. The intelligent minions had the foresight to begin slowly creeping out of the line of fire, realizing that their companion was, for lack of better terms, thoroughly and utterly screwed. It seemed that the unfortunate one had finally realized his unfortunate circumstance, the juxtaposition of their fearsome leader gently adjusting a half-asleep child while fixing his murderous gaze on the poor sought awakening some sort of flight instinct. It's all right, Tamura, Hisashi whispered, coaxing his eldest son back to sleep while ignoring the way his heart leapt at being called Dad for the first time. Daddy will remove the nuisance from the room right away. Go back to sleep. Thankfully, Tamura slipped back into unconsciousness mere seconds later, most likely the influence of his medicine, and he could finally turn his full attention on the shaking target of his wrath. Kurojiri, take this one away for education, All for One said, pleased with the speed at which his foggy servant appeared behind the man. If he has not thoroughly learned by the time I am done here, you may do with him as you see fit. Of course, master. Kurojiri warped the man away mid-scream. Fortunately, neither of the children woke up at the sound of that, to what the remaining people could only imagine was horrific torture of some kind. All for One seemed pleased, fixing his intimidating gaze on those still in his presence. Does anyone else have any idiotic statements to make about my leadership or my sons? Of course not. Never. Their onesies make them look very handsome and refined. The last statement made the group freeze in shock and fear, which morphed into something else when All for One smiled. Thank you. Izuku is having a dinosaur phase and the Stegosaurus onesie was delightfully soft, perfect for keeping him warm but not overheated. Tamura's is from Pokemon, a game with the goal of collecting as many animals as possible and utilizing strategy to optimize their quirks for battles, which is a perfect way of teaching him tactics without him realizing it, and it's made with a blend of fabrics that will not irritate his sensitive skin. I put in great effort to pick out the perfect clothing for them, but their mother insists that it doesn't make any noticeable difference. She can be a bit stubborn though and is likely unwilling to agree because she can't get past the price. It's not as though I can't afford it. What kind of international threat would I be if I couldn't afford decent children's clothing? The villain's associates simply smiled and nodded. Their leader was prone to muttering and rambling, and they knew better than to interrupt him when he got lost in a topic, even if it lasted for hours. In fact, this rambling session did last a couple of hours, no thanks to the second dumbest minion who kept fueling the conversation with his own experiences in fatherhood, and right when they collectively began wondering if one of them pretending to pass out would cut this short, the smaller of the two children began to stir. Daddy, the green-haired one croaked, tiny hands rubbing his eyes, am hungry. You're hungry? Do you want to try eating some soup? The green one hummed, lifting his tiny head before immediately dropping it on the villain's chest, sleepy. Hisashi smiled, rubbing Izuku's back gently. There, bunny. Sleep a little longer, and when you're awake we can get some soup in you. All for One raised his head, immediately dropping the softness he had just shown the small child in favor of glaring at his associates. It seems that this meeting will have to speed up a bit. Pay attention because I will not be repeating anything. All hints of the disorganized rambling they had been subjected to for hours was gone, replaced with the most concise strategy meeting they had ever attended. A mere 15 minutes later, heads reeling from the bombardment of information, when All for One left the premises to care for his children, mumbling something about taking a photo of the first time Tamura called him dad, the shell-shocked villains could all agree on one thing. This could have been an email. Despite being just 4 years old, Izuku really was too nice for his own good. He never complained to his parents, he never tried to argue with his Nichan, and he would never tell anyone when something made him upset, all because he was afraid of making people sad. He had forgotten, however, that it is impossible to hide anything from his Nichan. It was like he had some sort of Izuku sense, always knowing when he didn't feel happy and fully prepared to fix whatever he decided the problem was. That didn't mean he wouldn't try to keep it secret. He avoided Nichan's lingering gazes, shied away from Nichan's hands when they got too close to his wounds, and always told Nichan he was just tired after school when he declined invitations to play. Izuku didn't like it though. He loved being with Nichan, he loved Nichan's hugs, and he hated pushing Nichan away like this. Somewhere deep inside, he knew that if he told mommy and daddy what was wrong, then they could fix everything. But if he told, then they would talk to the teachers and the other kids at school, and they would get angry with Izuku, and everything would get even worse. No, he wouldn't tell anyone. If he kept it secret, no one would get mad at him. Tamura knew. Tamura knew that his baby brother was hiding something, and he knew that it was because of his strange fear of making people upset. He had a theory, practicing his critical thinking that Dad taught him, and his theory was that baby brother hated school. He had tried before to tell that to Mom and Dad, but they just thought it was another attempt to keep baby brother home with him. But of course he wanted baby brother to stay with him all the time. He can't protect baby brother when he's gone at school, and he can't keep baby brother happy if school is what makes him sad. But the way he was acting, Tamura's Izuku sense was going haywire. There was something really wrong with school, something really serious based on the way baby brother was avoiding him. And it was super obvious that baby brother was avoiding him. A happy baby brother would never turn down hugs or say he didn't want to play together. No, it wouldn't do at all to let baby brother stay unhappy. It was his duty as a big brother to find out what the problem was and fix it. Maybe he would get to destroy something along the way. That would be really fun after all. Izuku trudged through the door, exhaustion seeping into his bones. School was horrible as always, the kids were meaner than usual today, and he had some bruises on his arms that really hurt. He missed the days when Kaken was still nice to him, before Kaken got his quirk and called him Deku, when they would play heroes together and look for bugs in the forest. Now Kaken only talked to him to ask if he got his quirk yet and then to laugh and call him useless when he said not yet. He really wished that he could stop going to school, but Mommy and Daddy said that school was important. Not to mention, Mommy was friends with Kaken's mom, and he didn't want to make them not be friends anymore if he said Kaken was mean. Daddy didn't really care about Kaken, he had never liked the explosive blonde, but Daddy did care about school, 'cause education and meeting friends was important or something. Izuku retreated to his room with a sigh, ignoring Nichan's request for a hug and seeking out the comfort of his softest hoodie, a dark green one with long bunny ears that he got for his birthday. He felt bad turning down a special Nichan hug, but he really wanted to get out of his uncomfortable school uniform. The light blue smock was smeared in dirt and sweat and it irritated some of his wounds. When he had first gotten his uniform, the color reminded him of his Nichan's hair and made him feel super happy. Now though, having to put it on every morning filled his tiny body with dread. Baby brother? Nichan's voice was accompanied by a knock on his bedroom door. Want to come play with me? I made Kurogiri get a new ball since I accidentally decayed the last one. Oh, Izuku wanted to play so bad. Playing with Nichan always made him forget about school, but today he was hurting too much for any intense sports. He forced himself to stay quiet as he slipped on the green hoodie, but it seemed that his brother was too impatient for silence. Baby brother, I'm coming inside now, okay? Izuku sighed. Okay, Nichan, shoving his dirty uniform into his laundry basket right as the door opened. Nichan looked somewhere between annoyed, concerned, and like he had to use the bathroom. Mom always said that Nichan had some trouble with his feelings, so the fact that he looked like he was having an emotion was better than nothing. Except it didn't feel so nice when that expression was turned on him. True to his word, Nichan was holding a brand new red ball, one that would be good for all kinds of sports. Izuku's chest panged with the desire to go play with his brother while the bruises on his arms and the burns on his shoulder thoroughly rejected that notion. Wanna play, baby brother? Nichan asked, reaching out to hold his brother's hand, but Izuku flinched away when the hand came too close to a rather nasty bruise, ducking his head down to hide the wetness in his eyes. No thanks, Nichan. I'm really tired from school today. If he had been looking, he would have seen Tamura's face morph into barely contained fury. Tamura had noticed the way his baby brother walked into the house, keeping his arm from moving a lot, eyebrow twitching when his backpack rubbed against a certain spot, and a burn mark on his blue uniform hidden underneath the straps on his shoulders. He knew that if Dad was the one to get him from school, he would have seen the state baby brother was in, and Tamura found himself cursing his parents' busy schedules yet again. But baby brother flinching away from Tamura made him angry. Baby brother had never flinched away from him, because baby brother knew Tamura would never ever hurt him. "Baby brother, what's wrong?" Tamura asked, but his tone indicated that he meant it less as a question and more as a demand. "And nothing is wrong. I'm okay, Nichan." Oh, that obvious lie just made him even angrier. It made him so angry that Tamura stalked forward, not caring at how baby brother stumbled backwards and fell down. He grabbed the sleeve of the green hoodie, the arm that baby brother had tried not to move, and pulled it up, revealing the beginnings of a serious bruise. Moving the collar of the hoodie proved Tamura's suspicions of a burn were also sadly correct, although it was thankfully not a serious one. That didn't make Tamura any less angry though. If anything, it only made him feel downright murderous. "Who did this, baby brother?" Tamura growled, not budging when baby brother whimpered. "Is it school? The NPCs at school? Tell me and I'll fix it." The little boy burst into tears, but he crawled into Tamura's arms instead of pushing him away, seeking the comfort of his big brother as he began to explain everything. "Nichan, I just wanted to be friends. But everyone says I'm useless, 'cause I don't have my quirk yet. And Kaken wants to play, but it hurts when he plays. Everyone calls me Deku, but I don't want to be a Deku." The little boy wiped his nose, tears still streaming down his cheeks as he sobbed into Tamura's shoulder. "I tried telling the teachers, but they didn't do anything. And now Kaken and his friends are even meaner." He sniffled loudly, not caring about his snotty nose or Tamura's wet shirt, tightening his hold on his brother. "Nichan, will everyone be nice again when I get my quirk?" Tamura had never been more thankful for his gloves, knowing that he would have decayed half of the house halfway through baby brother's explanation. "Those NPCs aren't good enough for you, baby brother. They're jealous because they know they're nowhere near your level. They're trying to fight you to gain EXP. Alright, so Tamura isn't a master at comforting distressed children, but to his credit, baby brother didn't cry any harder. In fact, after a few minutes of hugging him and saying how stupid the school NPCs are, baby brother's crying got quieter. It only took a couple more hours of hugging baby brother for him to fall asleep, exhausted from school and all the crying. As soon as he felt his brother drift into a deep sleep, Tamura carefully peeled the boy off of him, tucking a certain fire-type Pokemon plushie under his arms, the very same plushie that had betrayed Tamura all those years ago, and silently slipped out of his room in search of their father. He could hear movement in his office, and Tamura paused outside the door for just a few seconds before throwing the door open. To his credit, the tall man didn't even flinch at the sudden noise, only flicking his eyes towards Tamura before returning to stare at some papers. "Is there something you need, Tamura?" Hisashi asked, noting the boy's foul attitude. "I want to destroy baby brother's school." Hisashi raised an eyebrow and sighed. "Tamura, you can't destroy a school just because you miss your brother Dash." "No!" Tamura shouted, and Hisashi instantly realized that he was serious. "Baby brother won't tell you because he thinks you'll get angry, but he showed me burns and bruises on him and said it's because the school NPCs are being mean, 'cause he doesn't have a quirk. Now I have to destroy the school to keep him safe." Hisashi was out of his chair in an instant, quickly going into Izuku's room and lifting his shirt, barely containing his silent fury at the sight of all the wounds on his body. He tucked a blanket around the sleeping boy. It was the least he deserved after everything he had suffered. All for one re-entered the office and closed the door behind him, 1,000 plans already flying around in his mind, fueled by the burning fury and malice. Tamura didn't say a word, having noticed the shift in personality, instead assuming his role as the villain's protege and awaiting further instruction. All for one was quick to access the security cameras at the school, and this time he did not hold back from punching a hole through his computer monitor in fury. He had already been hesitant to let Izuku attend school. His own memories of public education were less than stellar, but seeing evidence of his son's bullying being excused was the nail in the coffin. His son would never step foot in that building again. "Tamura," he began, the computer monitor already replaced by one from his stash thanks to Kurojairi, You wish to destroy this school, yes? Yes, sensei, the boy said through clenched teeth. I want to destroy the school and all of the NPCs that hurt baby brother. All for one nodded, pulling up relevant information on the monitor. Today shall be a lesson in the art of the revenge plot. Now, we unfortunately cannot kill any of his classmates or teachers. He held up a hand when Tamura's mouth opened, protests dying on the boy's tongue. They cannot be killed because your brother will not be attending that school anymore. It would look horribly suspicious if he were to be removed from the school and people associated with it suddenly met their demise. But sensei, how can I get revenge without killing anyone? Death is frequently too lenient a punishment, the man began, fingers steepled together as he fixed his eyes on the boy. In fact, people will suffer more if they are forced to be publicly humiliated for their crimes while still alive. Typically I would play a long game, bringing forth a lawsuit against the teachers for discrimination and filing restraining orders against the brats, but seeing as I don't want Izuku to spend a moment longer in that school, we will instead do something that you might find more cathartic. Tamura's eyes gleamed with wicked enthusiasm. Yes, sensei, what does cathartic mean, sensei? Yes. Sometimes All for One forgot that Tamura was only 9 years old and had the vocabulary of a child that age, but being over 200 years old means that you pick up an extensive selection of words. I'll use it in a sentence, and see if you pick up on the meaning. It's very cathartic to decay something when you feel angry. Tamura's brows scrunched for a brief moment, but All for One continued when he saw recognition in his protégé. Another sentence then, he said, rising from his desk and standing in front of the child, a terrifying smile spreading across his face. Burning Izuku's school to the ground and then framing his teachers for negligence and insurance fraud is incredibly cathartic. Izuku, Hisashi whispered, gently shaking his youngest son awake the next morning. The little boy was not at all a morning person, fighting for every second he could spend asleep, and was doing his absolute best to ignore the alarm clock that went off every morning. He eventually rolled over and cracked his eyes open ever so slightly, grumbling something unintelligible and attempting to bury his face into his pillow. Hisashi merely smiled at him, carting a hand through his curly hair and using the smallest hint of a quirk to pull him into a sitting position. I know you don't want to get up, Bunny, but there's something very important I need to tell you. Izuku finally relented, rubbing his eyes and leaning into the hand in his hair, grumbling in displeasure at being woken up. It occurred to Hisashi suddenly that perhaps Izuku's hatred of waking up was not the loss of sleep, but rather the dread of having to go to school, a place that Hisashi now knew he had reason enough to fear. Bunny, something happened to your school, so you'll be staying at home for a while. Hisashi paused, letting Izuku's tired brain process what he said. Of course, your education is very important, so you'll be doing your lessons at home with Tamura and I. It took a few more moments for the little boy's eyes to widen comically, looking up at his father and clutching his arm like his life depended on it. I don't have to go to school? I can stay here? With you and Ni-chan? That's right, Hisashi said, scooping his now fully awake son into his arms. And to celebrate this, why don't we go have a special pancake breakfast? Izuku's eager nod was answer enough, and Hisashi was more than happy to carry his son into the kitchen, bouncing his son as he walked just to make the boy laugh. They made a quick stop by Tamura's room, having to untangle him from his sheets after waking him up, and promptly guided the children into the room where Kurogyari was making their pancakes. They had just started eating, after having thanked Kurogyari. They had been taught manners, after all, when Izuku set his fork down, seemingly lost in thought. Daddy, he began after a few moments, why do I gotta stay home? What happened to school? Hisashi didn't miss a beat, setting down his silverware with a smile. Why, it was the strangest thing, Bunny. As it turns out, the school was violating several health codes. There were rats infesting the building, and last night it seemed that they chewed through electrical wires that sparked and caused the building to catch fire. Hisashi placed a finger on his chin, nodding thoughtfully. Why, the administrators were lucky that it hadn't happened sooner or when the children were in the building. Otherwise the lawsuit your mother is cooking up for health code violation would also be one for child endangerment. There were rats in the building? Izuku said with a shiver. The little boy had somehow fallen into a research hole about the Black Plague and was subsequently afraid that rats would get him sick. Hisashi nodded gravely, and Tamura scowled around his mouth full of pancakes. That school deserved to burn down. Rats aren't safe for baby brother. I agree, Hisashi ruffled Tamura's hair. That is why your mom has decided to sue, as such serious oversight could have hurt many of the students. Is that why mommy's already gone today? Izuku asked, a bit upset that he didn't get a goodbye hug, until he remembered he wouldn't be leaving today. Yes, Izuku, she's going to be very busy making sure the adults don't make mistakes ever again. Hisashi couldn't stop a bit of malice from seeping into his statements, as he knew that the lawsuit was not only for health code violations. Tamura had such fun decaying certain wires and letting rats loose, but also for the discrimination and negligence Izuku had endured. Not that the boy needed to know that now. He had a horrible habit of believing that everything was his fault, one that they would work on with some therapy. Actually, Hisashi started, making the boys look up from their breakfasts. How would you feel about being homeschooled from now on? You're too smart for what that school has to offer, and I know Tamura would love to have you in his lessons. The older boy nodded enthusiastically. It's true, baby brother. Those stupid lessons would be way more fun if you did them too. Now Tamura, we've been through this. Your education is very important. Izuku was staring at his brother and father as if they had raised the moon, abruptly standing on his chair with a shout. Yes. I want to do school here forever. With you and Nichan. Hisashi and Tamura smiled at the little green boy, his joy positively infectious. Well, it's settled then. You are officially a student in the prestigious Midoriya-Shigaraki Academy. Izuku beamed, reaching for his father to pick him up, and of course Hisashi happily obliged. Do I gotta wear a uniform, Daddy? Only if you want to, he said, clearing off the now empty dishes from the table, and the uniform can be whatever you want it to be. Mine's my favorite hoodie, Tamura supplied helpfully. If you wear your bunny hoodie, we can match. Izuku didn't even have to think as he immediately shouted, yeah, I want to match with Nichan. Hisashi smiled, kneeling to properly hug both Tamura and Izuku. I think that sounds wonderful. Since it's Izuku's first day at our academy, we have to take a picture to commemorate it. You take lots of pictures, Izuku giggled, and Tamura agreed with a nod. Well, of course I take lots of pictures, Hisashi gasped, placing a hand over his heart to feign shock. Any good dad would take as many pictures of his perfect sons as possible, and I like to think I'm a good dad. If Hisashi didn't have such good hearing, he wouldn't have heard Tamura's whisper, "You're the best dad." Thankfully, there was no way he could have missed Izuku's loud declaration of, "Yeah, you're the best daddy ever." Goodness, if All Might didn't kill him, his son's cuteness certainly would. Hisashi wasted no time getting them ready for their custom lessons, Villainy 101 and Grammar for Tamura, Basic Reading and Addition for Izuku, and took no less than 20 photos of them posing in their uniforms. It certainly didn't help that Izuku was posing like a pro and even managed to convince Tamura to join him in his fun. And a few weeks later, when a newspaper released an expose on the corruption of Aldra Elementary failing to be hidden by the sudden fire, it must have been a planned fire, the paper said, as there was evidence the higher-ups were planning to pocket the insurance payout for themselves after covering up awful discriminatory practices. Hisashi would proudly paste the newspaper clipping next to photos of Izuku's first day at homeschool. He really did love his sons more than any quirk in the world. For as long as he could remember, Tamura's skin had itched. He remembered the old bad family complaining about how much he itched, how much they hated caring for his dry skin, and telling him to just ignore it. The thing about an itch, though, is that it's nearly impossible to ignore. Sure, you can pretend you don't notice it, but you do. You'll do nearly anything to stop the itching, to just feel the relief of nothing making you want to tear your skin apart, to finally scratch that itch into oblivion. And that's exactly what Tamura had done for years. He scratched and scratched, until his skin was raw and bleeding, not stopping in a fruitless effort to not feel the discomfort that plagued him constantly. He might not have recognized it, but it had been ingrained in him to never seek help for the itching. After all, what else would a child think when told their itching was all in their head? So Tamura continued to rub his skin raw, even after being taken in by a new family, even after being given so much love from them, even after realizing they were safe to be around, he could not bring himself to mention his turmoil. His neck would be covered in nasty-looking irritated patches, fingertips covered in blood from the wounds, eyes rubbed raw, and skin all over his body flaking away. All the while, Tamura believed nothing was wrong, that it was right to just deal with his skin condition, because never complaining proved that he was strong. That didn't mean that no one noticed. Because how could anyone not notice his blood-coated fingertips, the constant pulling at already sensitive skin, the quiet whines that the boy didn't realize he let out when the itching became unbearable? No decent parent, at least, would not notice their child suffering silently, and Midoriya was most definitely concerned for her son. She vowed to protect him from the moment her husband brought him home, and explained that he was not the product of an affair, but could Inko be blamed for jumping to that conclusion? For goodness sake, the boy has Hisashi's red eyes and nearly white hair, and it didn't take long for the feeling of motherly love to come over her. While she was pregnant at the time and would soon give birth to her darling Izuku, it didn't make Tamura any less her son. He was a scared little boy who was left all alone, separated from his quite frankly awful family in a horribly traumatic way, and she adamantly refused to do anything less than making him feel like he belonged in her little family. Which was why, on one of Inko's few days off, she found herself worried about her oldest son. His skin condition was not a secret in the slightest, and more than once she had to pull his fingers away from the tender skin of his neck, cleaning the open scratch wounds and bandaging him up. She had tried reading all kinds of articles and medical blogs that gave at-home treatments and tips for breaking habits, but it didn't seem like anything was working. At first, she had just thought that it was stress-induced scratching, since it had to be stressful for a little boy to lose his family and gain a new one made of strangers in such a short time frame. Now, though, it had been a good couple of years since he came to live with them, and he seemed to have adjusted fairly well, yet the scratching only seemed to get worse. "Tamura, sweetie," Inko said softly, pulling away her son's hands that were digging into his neck. "Why are you scratching yourself so much? It must hurt to do that, and I want to help you if it hurts. Can you tell me what's going on?" Tamura physically paused, body unmoving but his face screwing up in frustration, something that Inko had learned was a sign that he was trying not to cry. She didn't push him any further, rubbing her thumbs against the back of his hands in a soothing gesture, which seemed to break the dam after just a few minutes. "I don't know." Tamura cried out, frustrated tears pouring out of his eyes. "Everything is itchy, and I just want it to stop. It's always been itchy. I gotta scratch it." "Well, that won't do at all," Inko frowned, pulling her son close to wipe his face with her handkerchief. "Tamura, I know a special kind of doctor that can find out how to stop your itching. Would you like to go see if they can help?" "I don't like doctors, 'cause they give shots," Tamura grumbled, making Inko stifle a giggle at her son's hatred of all kinds of medicine. She had already grown used to having to hide any medicine in whatever snack he would eat. And the shots were a different ballgame altogether. The first and last time he had gotten his shots, it took 4 nurses plus Inko to hold him down, the boy screaming curses against him the entire time. "Oh, trust me, sweetie, I know you don't like shots," Inko said, running her fingers through his tangled hair. "But this doctor won't give you shots. They're just going to look at your skin and ask some questions, and then they can tell us how to make you less itchy. So, what do you say? Want to give the doctor a try?" Tamura's eyebrows furrowed, mulling over the pros and cons of seeing this new doctor, but the hopeful look on his mom's face had him agreeing with one sharp nod. He was still a bit suspicious about it, but if anyone tried to give him a shot, he knew that Mom would stand up for him. And if that didn't work, he would just decay the doctors before they could even get the shot ready. The appointment went wonderfully, with the doctor immediately assuring that Tamura would not be getting any shots, easily explaining all of the questions they had for him, and patiently sitting through Tamura's disjointed ranting and accusations of the doctor being a quack. Inko was pleased with the doctor's kindness and skill. Tamura was disappointed that he didn't have an excuse to decay the doctor. "It looks like Tamura-kun has a type of eczema and xerosis, which is just extremely dry skin," the doctor said after the consultation. "Thankfully, both of those are relatively simple to treat, and there are numerous different kinds of topical creams. We can try to find the one that suits his needs the best. That is good news, Inko said, moving to hold her son's hand. What do you think, sweetie? Tamura thought for a moment before scowling at the doctor. So I'm not getting any shots? The doctor smiled, letting out an amused puff of air. No shots for you, Tamura-kun. All you're getting is some creams to keep your skin from getting too dry, and some medicine to take in case you have seasonal allergies. I don't like medicine, Tamura grimaced, making his mother sigh. They really did have to hide his medicine in treats like he was an animal. You don't necessarily have to take the medicine, the doctor explained, moving over to grab something out of a cabinet. You only need the medicine if these don't work for you. Apply this cream to the spots with open wounds and try not to keep it bandaged all day, and this one to his excessively dry patches of skin. The doctor squeezed a little of each tube on her gloved fingers, holding them out for Tamura to inspect and handing the tubes over to Inko. You can feel them if you'd like, Tamura-kun, the doctor said, patiently waiting as the boy gingerly moved to touch. See? It just goes on your skin, and it'll make it feel better in no time. He eyed the cream warily, unsure about if he liked the feeling or not. He had a brief memory of the old bad family putting something that felt similar on his neck, but that had only made it worse. It seemed that Inko could detect his hesitation and quickly deduced what the problem might be. We can just try it out for a few days, and if it makes it worse we won't put it on anymore, okay? Tamura stared at his hands for a bit longer, eventually nodding and holding his hand out to his mom. Will you put it on for me? For as long as he could remember, Tamura had itched. For years, he had scratched until his skin was raw and bleeding, never stopping in an unending quest to feel some relief. And for the first time in his life, Tamura didn't itch so bad anymore. The creams had actually healed his cracked skin and soothed the dryness that plagued him. His skin had never felt so good, no flaking, tearing, crusting, just smooth, healthy skin. Every night, Mom would gently rub the cream into his skin, the warmth of her hands contrasting the cool creams. He could do it himself, of course, but it just felt nicer when Mom did it for him. He swore that if Mom's quirk was an attraction, it would be a quirk that made his itching creams work better. Now that he didn't itch as much anymore, Tamura began to realize just how much he scratched his skin. He had done it for years, after all, and at this point scratching was just second nature to him. If his mind wasn't occupied, his hands would drift up to his neck, scratching until he suddenly registered the pain in his skin. If he got stressed out by something, his lessons or a hard level in a game, the scratching would start again. It was a habit that he just couldn't seem to break, no matter how hard he tried. However, unlike with the old bad family, Tamura's family was there to help him every step of the way. Mom and Dad would take turns reminding and helping him apply his creams, gently holding his hands when he started scratching, telling him that he was doing so well breaking his habit, and never getting upset with him when he scratched again. Baby brother helped so much too. He liked helping Mom and Dad with the creams, telling them when they missed a spot. He would also do everything he could to keep Tamura too busy to start scratching, playing all kinds of games with him to keep his hands occupied, even the games baby brother wasn't good at. It made him feel strange inside. Having his family show such love and care for him almost felt like it was too much, like his heart was going to explode or like something was moving around in his stomach. His skin creams might be cold, but he felt way too warm inside with his family being so wonderful to him. Maybe he should ask Dad-sensei's weird doctor about his heart pain. This many feelings couldn't possibly be healthy. Homeschool was so much better than Izuku ever could have imagined. He got to stay with his Nichan every day, his daddy would give them really fun lessons, and he was learning so much since he didn't have to feel worried about other kids in class. Daddy was teaching him all kinds of things he never heard in regular school, and he got to watch Nichan play with his quirk. Homeschool was the best thing ever. But Izuku wasn't totally happy. Sure, he loved getting to be with his family and learn way more interesting things, but he couldn't help feeling really jealous when he saw everyone using their quirks so much. It's just not fair. Nichan got a super cool quirk, Mommy got a super fun quirk, and Daddy has so many quirks. Why doesn't Izuku get a quirk too? He's already 5 years old after all, and everyone else got their quirks before they were 5. Where's Izuku's quirk? It made his tummy feel all twisty and twirly when he thought about it. He loved looking at all the pretty colors everyone had when they used their quirks. Nichan's pretty light blue, Mommy's flowy green, and Daddy's, well, Daddy's quirk was a different color every time, but still. Izuku just wanted a quirk color of his own. Every day when Izuku woke up, he would run to the mirror hoping for his color, but with each day that passed with no quirk color, Izuku got even sulkier. Like today, for example. Izuku was supposed to be working on writing his numbers really neatly while Daddy was at work, but there was no way he could focus on that with Nichan practicing with his quirk on the other side of the Nichan was decaying really big boxes, his hands shining that pretty blue color that Izuku wanted not to steal, just to borrow it and play with it, as the boxes decayed into dust on the ground. Izuku-san, Kurogyari's deep voice rang out right next to Izuku, please ease your grip on your pencil. Your hand will cramp up. His eyes looked down at his hand that, sure enough, was clenched so hard that his knuckles were white. He dropped the pencil right away, moving his hand around to ease the tension and keeping his eyes off of Kurogyari. It wasn't anything against Kurogyari, but the swirly purple and black of his quirk did nothing to calm the jealousy in Izuku's heart. Kurogyari always glowed purple a little, which made Izuku think that some part of the man's quirk was always on, but the glow was really deep and pretty when he opened a portal. The warp gate was yet another quirk that Izuku longed to play with. His hands would clench on reflex with the urge to just grab the pretty purple color, but something in Izuku's mind said it wouldn't be a good idea to borrow Kurogyari's quirk. Maybe not having his quirk would make Kurogyari super weak. All this thinking couldn't possibly be good for the little boy, who was prone to quite literally thinking so hard he would give himself headaches. The best way to stop thinking right now was to do his favorite activity, watching Nichan. And holy smokes, Nichan was amazing. He had moved on from decaying just one box to decaying 2 boxes at the same time. Izuku's hand twitched with the desire to write about Nichan and his quirk because it was just so amazing. The way Nichan moved and the way he was controlling his quirk was so cool that Izuku couldn't take his eyes off his brother for even a second. In fact, Izuku was staring at him so hard, it started looking like there was something on Nichan's chest. It looked like a marble that was glowing the same blue as his quirk. Izuku's jaw dropped at the sight of the marble, completely captivated by the way it glowed and moved. Whenever Nichan used more power, the blue would shine even brighter, and the edges of the marble were constantly fizzing out, the same way stuff would dust away when Nichan touched it. It was so pretty, so cool, he wanted it. Baby brother, what are you doing? It's dangerous to come close when my gloves are off. Izuku blinked at the sound of Nichan's voice, a fog clearing out of his sight. He looked around, confused at what was going on. Since when did he stand up? Nichan? What happened? Why am I over here? The older boy raised an eyebrow, quickly putting on his gloves while casting a concerned gaze over Izuku. Baby brother, I was practicing my quirk, and when I turned around to decay my next target, you were right in front of me and reaching towards me. Nichan stepped towards Izuku, now with gloves on, and placed his uncovered fingers against the green boy's forehead. Are you sick? Is that why you look confused? It doesn't feel like you have a fever. Nichan fretted over Izuku like a good big brother. Kurogyari, come feel baby brother's head, I think he's sick. I'm not sick, Nichan, Izuku mumbled. I just got tired and wanted a hug before my nap. Nichan visibly preened at Izuku's statement and wrapped him in a tight hug, which only made the little boy feel even worse for lying. It wasn't like he wanted to lie to his Nichan. Izuku hated lying, but he wasn't sure if he should tell Nichan about the blue marble. After all, he had been so entranced by the thing that he didn't even realize he had started walking towards it. What if Nichan decided that it wasn't safe to let Izuku watch his quirk practice and he never got to investigate the marble more? What if he told Daddy and Daddy never let Izuku see Nichan use his quirk again? Wow, baby brother, you really must be sleepy. Oh gosh, had Izuku zoned out again? He hadn't even heard Nichan say anything. Kurogyari, take baby brother home so he can take a nap. Tell sensei that I'm gonna finish this training and go home to keep him safe. Of course, Shigaraki Tamura. A warp gate opened right in front of the boys, but Izuku quickly found himself being drawn in by a marble on Kurogyari's vest. It was black and purple with swirly clouds inside. twisting and waving around like smoke. It was so cool. Izuku yelped as he was suddenly lifted off of his feet and placed onto Nichan's back, clinging on like he always did during piggyback rides. He nestled his face on Nichan's neck, embarrassed that he had gotten so caught up looking at Kurogiri's marble that Nichan had to pick him up like a baby. Izuku didn't mind being babied a little bit. It didn't feel bad when Nichan carefully put Izuku on his bed and draped his softest blanket over him, but it was just so humiliating that he didn't notice when he was walking or someone was talking to him. Maybe a nap would make everything better. The nap did not make it better. If anything, Izuku's dreams filled with colorful marbles only made his jealousy worse. On the bright side, it did seem like the nap had helped his focus. Daddy had come home early when Kurogiri notified him of Izuku's impromptu nap, and Izuku had been able to admire his color-shifting marble without getting lost in it again. After receiving some very comforting hugs from Daddy, and 15 long minutes of checking his temperature with every thermometer they had, just in case he was coming down with something, Izuku made his way out to the game room to spend time with his Nichan. His favorite way to play with Nichan was to watch him play his games. Nichan is so cool when he plays games. And cheer him on whenever he did something awesome. Nichan was playing a very difficult battle game, fighting against all kinds of scary-looking monsters that looked super hard to beat, and had upped his level by playing without his gloves. Usually, he wouldn't play without them, but Daddy had said that it would be good practice in controlling his quirk and temper to play without the gloves. If he lost his temper, he would accidentally decay a controller and totally lose. The game was already hard enough without the added challenge, and Izuku could even feel himself getting irritated, so it was no surprise when he noticed Nichan clenching his jaw and gripping his controller tighter than usual. Izuku knew that it wouldn't be much longer before Nichan snapped, so he strategically leaned out of the danger zone as he started counting down the seconds until the oncoming freakout. Izuku didn't know why, but he had always found Nichan's freakouts hilarious. It was why he loved watching him play games so much. One time Daddy even showed him a picture of Izuku when he was a baby and made Nichan have his first ever breakdown because of Pokemon. Izuku thought the picture was hilarious. Nichan tried to decay it. Izuku laughed even harder when he realized that Nichan always glared at his favorite plushie because it was the one that made him have that breakdown. It only took one more game over screen for Nichan to throw his controller across the room and grab the pillow right next to him, burying his face into it as he started to scream. Izuku was just about to start quietly laughing at his distraught brother, but the appearance of that blue marble stopped him in his tracks. The glow wasn't bright like when Nichan used his quirk, but it was there, just bright enough for Izuku's mind to scream, "Just hold it. Brothers are supposed to share." Izuku's eyes widened at that thought. Daddy always said that good brothers share everything, and Nichan wasn't even using the blue glow right now. So maybe he wouldn't even notice Izuku reaching out slowly, feeling something extend from his hand and gently prod against the blue marble. It was dry like Nichan's skin when he forgets to use his lotion. Wrapping the invisible appendage around the marble and pulling. It was like a shock went through his arms, making the boy clench the blanket over his legs reflexively, only for the blanket to decay and a loud scream to rip out of his throat. And oh, how his throat felt sore and dry, but he couldn't stop screaming because he's not supposed to be able to decay things. That's not his quirk. It's Nichan's quirk. Izuku's blood ran cold as he looked up at his brother, who had experienced a similar jolt of electricity and cold seeping through his veins, and Nichan turned to Izuku with horror in his eyes. "Baby brother," he whispered, his voice missing its raspiness. "Baby brother, I touched the couch and nothing happened." Izuku felt himself begin to shake, but he couldn't stop himself. It was like he wasn't controlling his own body. His arms dropped as the situation began to hit him, but he realized too late that his hands were going to touch the couch. Not even Nichan's shout of, "Don't touch it," could stop his hands, and next thing he knew, both boys were crashing to the ground, a pile of dust the only thing that remained of it. For a few tense moments, the brothers simply looked at each other with wide eyes, and then they were both screaming in panic. Izuku had balled his hands into fists, wailing about how he didn't mean it and kicking his Nichan away, who was desperately trying and failing to get his gloves on Izuku's hands. Izuku didn't know what to do. He wanted the comfort of a hug from his Nichan, but did a thief like him deserve a hug? He couldn't even touch Nichan without decaying him, which only made his sobbing worse. He didn't know how to give Nichan's quirk back. Or worse, what if he couldn't give the quirk back? He just made Nichan quirkless forever. Now he would never get to hug Nichan or mommy or daddy ever again. Baby brother! Nichan shouted above Izuku's wailing cries. You have that button from Dad. Press the button. Dad can help. How could Daddy help? All he could do is take quirk away. Daddy can take it away. Izuku shouted, immediately moving to grab the panic button that was tucked in his pocket, which he unfortunately decayed as soon as it was in his hand, leading to the brothers freaking out even more. Izuku's throat felt so dry, his skin was so itchy, and he started feeling like it was getting harder to breathe. It was at that exact moment when the door was flung open and Hisashi stormed into the room, who had received a notification that Izuku's tracker panic button had been destroyed and immediately assumed that his son was being kidnapped. Hearing the screaming as he ran towards their game room only confirmed his suspicions, activating all for one at once to remove the quirk of the kidnapper. However, he was not met with a kidnapper soon to be an unfortunate stain on the wall, but rather his sons in a pile of dust, with Izuku at the beginning of a panic attack in Tamura. Hisashi's quirk did not detect decay within Tamura, but rather within Izuku. He did not hesitate to rip the quirk out of Izuku, sliding down on his knees to catch the small boy as he fell over. I'm sorry, Bunny, I know that didn't feel nice, Hisashi whispered, cradling Izuku gently, but it's okay now, I'm here. You can't decay anything anymore. He shifted Izuku around, one large hand settling on the boy's back to help even out his breathing while the other hand gestured for Tamura to come closer. Take a deep breath, Hisashi instructed once Tamura stood next to him, placing his hand on the boy's forehead and returning decay as painlessly as possible. Tamura jolted at the sudden feeling of his quirk returning, the familiar dryness and itching settling into his skin, but he decayed the last pillow in the room just to make sure decay really was back. See that? Hisashi said to Izuku, who had watched his brother's display of quirk. Tamura's got decay back and everything is okay. Okay, Izuku blubbered, tears slowing as his panic subsided. I'm sorry, Nichan. I didn't mean to. Tamura's eyes watered slightly, emotion welling up inside him at the sight of his precious baby brother upset, but he quickly blinked any trace of moisture away, which wasn't hard to do thanks to the sudden return of his chronic dry skin. It's all right, baby brother. It was an accident. I have accidents all the time. Izuku merely nodded and sniffled, burying his face into his dad's shoulder to dry the flow of tears, which had increased again when Tamura had moved closer to put his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Hisashi was content to comfort his sons, but he still needed to know exactly what had happened. He knew that this was Izuku's quirk manifesting and that it was similar to his own, if not exactly like his own, but the details remained a mystery. It seemed that Izuku's breathing had finally evened out, and Hisashi knew that the boy would likely fall asleep in just a few minutes. Quirk manifestations tended to be stressful on children and exhaust them. Izuku, Bunny, can you tell me what happened when you borrowed Tamura's quirk? Hisashi chose his words carefully, using borrowed instead of stole, as Izuku would likely get upset if he thought anyone saw him as a thief. The little boy sniffed again, wiggling in Hisashi's arm to look him in the eye. I'm sorry, Daddy. I got really upset seeing everyone's pretty quirk lights, 'cause I want my own quirk. I saw Nichan's blue light and tried to feel it, but I grabbed it and took it. Izuku's lip wobbled, fresh tears threatening to spill over when he looked at Tamura. I didn't mean to take your quirk, Nichan. Please don't hate me. I'll never hate you, baby brother, Tamura declared, looking both offended and distraught that his precious little brother feared being hated. Even if you take every quirk in the world, I'll always love you, like a good big brother. Yet again in his life of fatherhood, Hisashi found himself grateful for his large stature, as it was easy to hold both of his babies securely in his arms. He could tell that they both wanted and needed a hug, and he had vowed to always provide hugs at all times. No one hates you now, he assured Izuku. Accidents happen when the quirk first develops, but that does mean you get to add quirk practice to your schooling now. So I can practice quirks with Nichan now? His son had looked so pure and innocent when asking that question, there was no way Hisashi could have denied him, not that he was going to anyway. They would need test subjects for Izuku to practice on after all. Of course you can. But first, we should take you to the quirk doctor. Nichan. Izuku's odd voice filled the room as he tugged on his brother's sleeve. He looks like Dr. Eggman. It was pure coincidence that one of the only associates of All for One who also knew of his identity as Shigaraki Hisashi just so happened to be a quirk specialist by profession, but that would make studying Izuku's quirk, and altering his quirk registry, much easier. It was a simple ordeal to schedule a house call with the doctor during the boys' school time, and Izuku had nearly paced a groove into the flooring by the time the doctor entered the room. It was also a coincidence that Dr. Garaki bore a strong resemblance to the evil doctor from one of Izuku's favorite games to watch Tamura play, and in true 5-year-old fashion he had not been quiet when pointing out that fact. Tamura gasped, rubbing his eyes as if that would clear his vision. "Baby brother. You're right. And you made a video game reference." It was a good thing that the doctor was a well-mannered man, choosing to chuckle at their childish antics rather than sneer at them. Actually, that might be because of the most dangerous man in Japan standing tall behind the boys, already having made it clear that anyone who dared disrespect them would be tortured and possibly killed. "Boys, this is Dr. Garaki," Hisashi said, not bothering with putting on his villain persona. "He is a licensed quirk specialist and will help us learn all of the basics about Izuku's quirk." The boys bowed politely, Tamura rising shortly after while Izuku continued to bow. Hello. I'm Izuku and I got my quirk yesterday." His eyes were shining as he stood upright, trying and failing to tone down his excitement. "It's a pleasure to meet the young masters," Garaki replied. "Now, let's run some tests on your quirk. I've got a few theories I'd like to test out." The exam started out like a normal doctor's appointment, doing things like checking Izuku's heartbeat, breathing, and reflexes, among other things. This confused Izuku at first, but the doctor was quick to explain that they needed to make sure everything was working all right on the inside in case his quirk made something happen. Then they had Izuku explain what happened when he used his quirks, shocking the little boy when they explained that taking Nichan's quirk was not when Izuku's quirk manifested. Rather, it had begun when Izuku started seeing the colors around people. Who could have known? After that was testing the quirk itself, but Izuku was a little scared of doing that. Daddy promised that nothing bad would happen, and after a few minutes of a pep talk, Izuku finally reached out for the quirk Daddy was holding out, a really light orange one that looked a little squishy, only taking a few more seconds to calm down enough to try using the new quirk. The quirk was kind of weird. It made everyone in the room have colors all over them, not like quirk colors. Those only stayed around the point where someone used their quirk, and Daddy said that the colors represented what a person was really feeling. What a cool quirk. Now Izuku could know when Nichan was having a feeling or just had to go to the bathroom. Then came practicing giving the quirk back, which Izuku didn't know how to do since Daddy had taken decay from him before. Took a little while to explain how to think of it, but eventually Izuku decided to think about it like the shelf in his room where he puts his stuffed animals. Izuku is the shelf, and the quirk is the stuffed animal. He imagined pulling the squishy orange quirk from the shelf. Actually, now that he thought about it, it looked and felt like his fire Pokemon stuffed animal from Nichan, and imagined holding it out in front of him, putting it on the shelf inside of Daddy. And it worked. Izuku didn't have the quirk anymore, he gave it back. Although, now his shelf felt too empty. He wanted to fill it up with all kinds of quirks. Dr. Garaki looked up from his clipboard, happily smiling at Izuku. Izuku definitely has another version of All for One. And wow, did that thought fill Izuku's heart with warm fuzzies? However, he does not have an exact replica of your quirk, Master. When comparing the schematics of his quirk with yours, it's evident that his is different in some way. I have ideas that we can try, but this might also be something that he can only unlock as he ages and gains strength. So his quirk is different? That just made Izuku want to know more. "Mr. Doctor, what's the test? I want to find out everything about my quirk." The doctor glanced over at Izuku's dad, who gave a short nod, and then grabbed a sheet of paper from the table. "My first theory is that Izuku's quirk combined with his mother's attraction, so he might be able to give and take quirks without the need for a physical point of contact. That one is quite simple to test out, he just needs to attempt to grab a quirk from a distance." So they did just that, having Izuku see the same squishy orange marble from before and try grabbing it without touching Daddy's hand. He tried and tried for what felt like forever, shaking from the effort of grabbing without hands, but eventually Daddy told him to stop. Before Izuku could get sad and think he failed, Daddy assured him that it's not a bad thing if he can't do something. Besides, he might be able to do it later, after he trained his quirk a lot. The second theory, the doctor continued after writing something on his paper, is a bit more experimental. Izuku, you described the quirks you saw as marbles, but what did the marbles feel like? Were they solid and hard, or did it feel like there were pieces you could take apart? Izuku scrunched his nose in thought. I don't know. The orange one felt kind of squishy, like my stuffed animals. Let's try something out then, okay? Daddy asked, and Izuku nodded eagerly. All right, can you look at the orange quirk you have? Izuku nodded, his eyes closed to focus on the orb more. Think about all the parts of a stuffed animal. There's a head, arms, legs, maybe a tail or wings. Can you see different parts like that in the marble? He looked carefully at the orange marble in front of him, and for a split second he did see something like pieces. Yeah, not like real arms and legs, but it's got parts. Izuku turned the orange ball around in his imaginary hands, noticing something else about it. I think I could take it apart, or maybe put another piece on it. That's excellent, Bunny. Now, take this quirk too, and see if you can use the parts and make something new. Okay. Izuku chirped, opening his eyes to see that Daddy had a new marble, a metallic silver one, and eased it into his mind shelf. This one felt like it buzzed a little bit, like one of Nichan's video game controllers when he got hit, and it didn't take long for Izuku to notice the pieces in this one too. Looking at both of the quirk marbles next to each other, he began to notice all the ways that the quirks could be mixed together, not quite a stuffed animal, but more like building a really cool blockhouse. He could take a piece of shiny silver and put it here, use a bit of orange there, and build the most amazing block tower ever. It looked so easy, like it would take just one snap. Izuku's eyes shot open, gasping at the feeling of two quirks becoming one. Daddy, something happened? Izuku wasn't quite sure about it, so he offered up the quirk marble. Can you look at it and see? I don't know what it did. His dad smiled and nodded, taking the quirk and activating it. The marble looked so much cooler now when it was being used, shiny shifting orange mixed with silver resembling pieces of armor, almost like those camera robots from old movies Daddy liked to watch. Hisashi, meanwhile, was marveling at his son's creation. The two quirks had been relatively weak ones, an aura-sensing quirk and presence detection quirk, but were now combined into a single fully functioning quirk. He noted that the quirk seemed to detect auras, but would alert the user to the presence of someone with potentially dangerous intentions. Of course, Izuku wouldn't yet be able to use the full capability of the quirk, but would no doubt gain mastery of it and others. You did so good, Izuku. Hisashi beamed at his son, heart full of pride. You took the parts of both quirks and mixed them together, and now you have a quirk that can tell you when a bad person is trying to come near you. Izuku's jaw dropped open, and Hisashi tamped down the instincts that screamed to take a photo of his adorable son. Instead, he pulled the quirk in front of him again, gesturing for Izuku to take it back. You should keep this one, he said. It's your first project after all, and the first one is always going to be special. The small child grinned, taking the orb once again, tackling Hisashi in a tight hug as soon as he had absorbed the quirk. It was so cool, Daddy. I thought that it was just marbles at first, 'cause marbles are round and colorful and pretty, and the quirks are round and colorful and pretty, but I don't want marbles as much as I wanted quirks. And I can't take marbles apart either. Mommy won't let me play with marbles a lot because she told me that someone she works with has a baby and the baby ate a marble, but I'm not a baby and I know that marbles aren't candy, so I'm not gonna eat it. I looked at the marble, and since it's not hard like a marble and I can't play with marbles, I started thinking it looks like a circle block tower. I can build block towers and take them apart and add on stuff like towers and windows, and quirks are like blocks, so I took the orange blocks and the silver blocks and built a whole new quirk tower marble. Izuku had begun rambling and Hisashi had pulled out his phone, recording his baby's first ever mutterstorm while muffling his happy tears threatening to fall. Not only had his little boy inherited his quirk, He had his rambling too. He just knew that he and Izuku would have the most amazing time discussing quirks for hours. Maybe if they could find a common interest with Tamura, they could all ramble together. What a wonderful father-son bonding activity that would be. After a long afternoon of testing quirks and listening to Izuku's lecture, everyone was feeling a bit tired by the time Kurogyari had opened a portal to bring them all home for dinner. Not tired enough for Izuku to resist pointing out that Kurogyari's quirk looked like someone built it like Izuku himself had just done, which implied that this 5-year-old boy could easily create quirks capable of making more servants like Kurogyari, something that had taken all for 1 year to learn and perfect. His baby boy had so much potential. Tamura had just excused himself to the bathroom when Hisashi suddenly remembered something he had intended to do for a long time, pausing with Izuku midair instead of placing him on his chair at the table. "Izuku," he whispered, bringing his youngest son close to him, "I have a gift for you doing so well with the doctor today." "A gift?" Izuku whirled around to face his dad. "What is it? I want to see." Hisashi grinned, bringing forth a quirk he had been saving, and Izuku's eyes grew as large as dinner plates at the sight of it. "It's pretty," he breathed out. "It's all kinds of swirly browns, like all of the brown colors in my crayon box, or Nichan's games when he gets to make characters. And it's yours. Go on, take it, I'll explain it to you once you do." Izuku nodded, placing the quirk on his shelf. It had felt warm, strong and soft all at the same time, and he had a fleeting feeling that it would be really nice to hug. "That quirk is the kind that's always on," Hisashi began, "like Tamura's decay. But because of the way our quirks work, we can choose to turn quirks like that off if we think hard about it. This one specifically negates the effects of all touch-based quirks used against you." Izuku knew that meant something, but his tired and hungry child brain just couldn't figure out what it was. Hisashi, like a good father, had noticed the boy's confusion. Lucky for them, he saw the perfect visual aid come back into the room. "I think you can figure it out," he said, gesturing for Tamura to come closer, "but we'll need your big brother's help if that's okay with you." "I love it when Nichan helps." Izuku's voice overflowed with his adoration of his brother, and Tamura visibly puffed up at his declaration. "That's perfect. Tamura, please remove your gloves." The blue-haired boy looked confused but followed instructions without arguing, putting his gloves on the table without placing all 5 fingers on anything. "All right, Izuku, let's see your brand new quirk in action. Tamura, would you please touch Izuku's arm with all 5 fingers?" "You know," Tamura shrieked when the words fully sunk in, "I can't touch baby brother with my whole hand, I'm never going to hurt him." "It'll be all right, Tamura dash. I won't ever touch baby brother." Tamura tucked his hands against his chest, taking a couple steps away for good measure. "Tamura," Hisashi began, reining in a sigh threatening to burst from his throat, "I promise you that you won't hurt Izuku. Just trust me." The older boy shook his head wildly. But what if something does happen? What if I decay baby brother? I can't dash." "Nichan," Izuku's high-pitched voice interrupted the beginning of Tamura's breakdown. "It's okay, I know you don't want to hurt me, and I'll still love you even if you do. But I dash." Hisashi nearly choked at the pure sass his youngest son exuded in that moment, rolling his eyes at Tamura's hesitation, grabbing the older's arm and smacking his uncovered hand against Izuku's arm. Although, it was worth it to hear Izuku squeal in delight when his arm didn't disintegrate. Goodness, maybe Hisashi ought to monitor the cartoons and games they see more strictly. "See that, Nichan? I'm still here." Izuku's shout snapped Hisashi out of his plans to change the parental control settings, making him look down to see what had made the boy so angry. "Nichan, you gotta open your eyes to see my arm is still here. Open your eyes before I open them for you." Alright, he was definitely beefing up the parental controls, because where had Izuku learned to talk like that? On the bright side, Izuku's sudden development of an attitude had Tamura cracking his eyes open the tiniest bit, snapping open when he finally took in the sight of his bare hand not decaying his baby brother. "Baby brother," Tamura choked out after a few loaded seconds, eyes glistening with unshed tears, "I'm not decaying you. I've never felt anything with my whole hand in so long dash." The tears finally began to pour out of Tamura's eyes. his hands moving frantically all over Izuku's arms and face before finally pulling his baby brother in for the tightest hug in the world. The sight was so precious that Hisashi discreetly snapped several photos of the scene. Tamura had started decaying phones when he thought an unflattering photo of him had been taken, already sorting through them to decide which ones to print out for his scrapbook. Okay, he physically could not choose one photo out of all of them. But that just meant he could make an entire page in his scrapbook of nothing but the pictures of Tamura sobbing while hugging Izuku. Goodness, that would be the best adorable embarrassment material for when the boys were older and brought friends home. Right now though, with both of his sons crying happy tears while holding each other, Hisashi didn't want to think of them growing up. No matter how old they became, they would always be his babies. While every child is different in their own ways, nearly all of them shared one thing in common: the love of going to the park. There was something about the park that was just so appealing, and the spiraling playground was practically a siren call for any energetic young kid. Izuku was no different. He loved going to the park to run around and play pretend, pouring his energy into the games he played. He could occasionally convince Tamura to play with him, but the older boy would put up a fight every time, whining about the light hurting his eyes and being too tired to play. Even if he didn't have any friends to play with, it was still so much fun to play on the playground. The playground was also important for the boys' development. Despite their urge to bubble wrap their kids and keep them safe inside forever, Hisashi and Inko both knew the importance of independence for a child's development. Typically, a child receives that independence from the parents at school, but being homeschooled meant that they would have to find an alternative method. But what would ease the mind of a mildly overprotective parent while giving the kids the illusion of being independent? The answer came to Hisashi like a bolt of lightning. No, literally, lightning struck the metal flag on top of a playground close to home while Hisashi was out doing some light criminal activity. That gave him the idea of donating new playground equipment under the guise of charity, using his civilian name of course, which he would then outfit with state-of-the-art hidden surveillance technology to be able to keep an eye on his children when they decided to go play at the park. Since they were not restricted by traditional school hours, as their homeschooling tended to be in the afternoon, when Hisashi had mostly finished his work, Izuku would often drag Tamura to the park when all the other kids were at school. It wasn't that he didn't want to meet people, because Izuku loved talking to people, but rather that the best time to play at the park just happened to be in the morning when no one else was there. After all, when nobody is there, Izuku had full control over the pirate wheel on the tallest tower. Besides, last time they had tried to play at the park when other kids were there, someone had called their quirks villainous, which led to both boys immediately fighting the culprit. Hisashi was proud of his son's teamwork and fighting skills, but a sharp glare from Inko had him biting back his praise in favor of agreeing that it wasn't nice to fight other kids and they would be grounded for it. Hisashi bought them the new game they wanted and snuck it into their collection when Inko had left for work. He was so proud of his baby boys. Today was another one of those days. Izuku had looked out of the window at breakfast and, upon seeing the beautiful blue sky, promptly begged his Nichan to go with him to the park. Nichan tried to resist, saying that it would be way more fun to stay inside, but Izuku had been practicing his puppy eyes for moments just like this and got his brother to agree after just a few moments. Nichan was laying upside down on the park bench under a really big tree, playing a game on his handheld console, and Izuku had zipped over to the swings the instant they were in sight. After swinging as high as he could go, being that high up was a little scary but super fun, Izuku had climbed to the tippy top of the jungle gym. He had gotten new quirks from Daddy, one that helped him move super fast and another that let him see better than usual, and he really wanted to play with them. After all, it was way more fun to practice with new quirks at the park. Izuku was studying the ground from his perch on the jungle gym, wondering if it was worth it to test his new durability quirk just to scare Nichan by jumping down when he felt the pull of a new quirk approaching. Since starting his training with Daddy, Izuku had learned to feel the pull of a quirk without mindlessly attempting to take it, which had come in handy a month ago on his mall quest. There were so many amazing quirks around, even pro-hero quirks, and he hadn't taken a single one. And now he could find out when someone was nearby just by feeling their quirk. Peering in the direction of the oncoming quirk, Izuku was surprised to see a blonde boy walking down the sidewalk, kicking rocks as he ambled on. The boy looked to be about Izuku's age, which wasn't surprising considering that this was a park with a great playground. However, it was suspicious since he was wearing a school uniform during school hours, and Izuku knew that schools don't let the students leave until the afternoon. He knew that the boy would probably cause trouble, since all the other kids that came here bothered Nichan and tried to steal his gloves. But this boy looked so sad, and Izuku was bored of playing alone, and his quirk? Well, the marble looked a lot like Daddy's, clear and filled with shifting colors, so he just had to go say hello. And maybe he would want to play pirates instead of heroes. Izuku scrambled down the side of the jungle gym and sprinted towards the boy with just a hint of his speed quirk right as the boy had crossed the playground's boundary. Hi! Izuku stuck his hand out, ignoring the way the blonde had yelped and jumped back. My name's Izuku, wanna play pirates with me? We can be captains together. The boy squinted at him suspiciously, rolling his eyes and scoffing. You're right, if you're going make fun of me for my quirk, you're not gonna say anything I haven't heard already. So just go away and leave me alone. Izuku tilted his head in confusion. Why would I make fun of your quirk? I love every quirk I've ever seen. Oh really? The boy said sarcastically. You won't be saying that when you realize I'm useless without someone else's quirk. But nobody is useless, Izuku replied, grabbing the blonde's hand and pulling him towards the sandbox. What kind of quirk is it? Is it one that turns off quirks or makes people use them? 'Cause that would be super cool. The boy's eyes widened briefly but quickly turned downcast as he squatted down and began drawing in the sand with a nearby stick. You're gonna laugh and say it's stupid, the boy said through his pout, but it's a copy quirk. If I touch someone, I can use a copy of their quirk. Izuku's jaw dropped. The boy had a copy quirk, no wonder his marble looked like Daddy's. But wait, that meant... Of course, the blonde scoffed. You think it's a stupid quirk? You're the same as everyone else dash. Are you my cousin? Am I what? Are you my cousin? Izuku repeated. Your quirk is a lot like mine, and I've never met anyone else with something like it, so you must be my cousin. Izuku leaned forward, putting his hands on the boy's shoulders. So what's your name? Is your family name Midoriya like mine? Or maybe Shigaraki like Nichan's? My name is Minoma Nito, so not one of those names, sorry. That's okay. I read about cousins and sometimes they have different last names. So we can still be cousins, Nito-chan. Nito stammered, fingers fidgeting as he looked at his cousin. So, how's your quirk like mine? Does it copy quirks too? It's not really copying, Izuku began, remembering what Daddy had told him to say about his quirk. It's more like borrowing. If I touch someone, I borrow their quirk, so they can't even use their quirk until I give it back. Izuku smiled at Nito, who looked like Izuku had felt hearing about his similar quirk. So, if you're worried I'd think your quirk was stupid, 'cause it's not strong without someone else, Izuku said, reaching out to hold one of Nito's hands, then that would be super mean of me. Because mine is the same without a quirk to borrow. The blonde boy nodded weakly, a sudden wetness in his eyes that Izuku knew was polite to ignore. He was an easy crier, after all, and it was so embarrassing when someone pointed it out. But now that his maybe cousin knew they had something in common, a great idea popped into Izuku's head. Hey, he said, poking Nito's soft hair, if you want to be friends, we can go steal Nichan's quirk and play with it. Nito still looked a bit dazed but nodded nonetheless. He did want a friend really badly, and Izuku had been really nice to him, not protesting when the green-haired boy grabbed his arm and pulled him over to the boy laying on the bench. Izuku wasted no time once his target was in sight. He pulled Nichan's hood off his head, and ignoring how he actually hissed, the light. It burns, grabbed Nito's arm and smacked Nichan's head with it, also ignoring Nichan whining and faking pain, which he followed up by yanking his hood back on and going back to his game. Now come here. Izuku grabbed Nito by the wrist and led him to a spot under the tree, picking up a large stick. Use Nichan's quirk and hold this. The blonde was hesitant at first but relented, taking the stick in his hand and promptly screaming when it decayed before his eyes. Isn't Nichan's quirk so cool? Izuku squealed, but swiftly realized that cousin Nito was starting to panic and about to grab his own shirt, which wouldn't end well for the shirt, so he pulled copy away right before Nito's hand made contact. Nito's eyes snapped up and his mouth opened, But Izuku interrupted him before he could speak. Sorry about borrowing copy, Izuku chirped, tapping the blonde's forehead and returning his quirk, but I didn't want you to accidentally decay anything important. The boys stood there quietly for a moment, Izuku swinging a foot while Nito was deep in thought. Maybe surprising him with decay was a bad idea? Maybe we are cousins, Nito whispered, making Izuku giggle softly. I'd like to be your cousin, Izuku said, and even if we aren't cousins, do you want to be friends? I've never had a friend before, but I really want one. I don't really have friends either, Nito confessed like it was a government secret, but I would like to be your friend. Okay, we're friends now. Izuku cheered, holding Nito's hand once again, and since we're friends now, do you want to play pirates with me? Sure. But why not heroes? All the kids at my school play heroes. Izuku scrunched his nose at the question, pulling Nito towards the tower with the pirate ship wheel. Because playing heroes is boring. Everyone already wants to be a hero, but imagine if a pirate had a quirk. That would be way more fun. The other boy thought about it for a moment but found himself agreeing wholeheartedly after just a few minutes of playing. Pretending to be a grown-up wasn't nearly as fun as pretending to be Captain Phantom and Captain Green Thief, leaders of the famous pirate ship, the Musketeer. Hey Nito-chan? Do you go to real school? Nito lowered the stick he was using as a sword, tilting his head at Izuku in confusion. What do you mean? What's real school? You know, like going to school in a big building with lots of other kids. Izuku said, gesturing towards the blue-haired boy playing video games. I used to do real school, but now I do school at home with Ni-chan. Oh, yeah, I go to real school with other kids and stuff. Izuku nodded. So why aren't you in school right now? I know it's school time. Well, I didn't want to go because the other kids at school are mean, Nito sighed. They make fun of me because of my quirk, and no one wants to play with me. 'Cause they think I'm gonna steal their quirks? That's mean. Izuku huffed, stomping his foot. You're not stealing quirks, it's copying. And it's still super cool. They're just stupid if they don't want to be your friend because you're really fun and nice. Nito felt his cheeks heat up at the compliments, but nearly choked at his new friend's next words. You should come to my house to play if you're not going to school today. We're friends now, and all the shows say that friends go play at their houses. And if we're cousins, then you have to come over. And really, what was stopping him? Nito liked Izuku, they had fun playing together, they had really similar quirks, and Izuku hadn't been mean to him at all. So when Nito nodded enthusiastically, he didn't put up a fight when Izuku beamed and grabbed his hand, dragging him over to the bench where the blue-haired boy was still lying upside down. Ni-chan, I want to go home now. And cousin Nito is coming with us. Finally! The older boy shouted, unceremoniously flopping off of the bench. And what do you mean, cousin? We don't have cousins. Maybe we do. Izuku said, the games always have secret family members, so maybe this is the start of a new main quest. Tamura pondered this before shrugging nonchalantly. Whatever, let's just go home. I want to play my games, so I'm calling Kurogyri. Less than a minute later, a swirling black and purple cloud opened up in front of them and Nito did his best not to scream. Izuku simply grabbed his hand and pulled him into the cloud, right behind his brother, appearing inside a house somehow that was apparently Izuku's. Izuku-san, Tamura-san, the cloud man said, why is there another child with you? I am not aware of any new brothers that you suddenly have. Nito-chan isn't a brother. Izuku insisted, he's my new friend. And maybe a cousin, 'cause his quirk is like mine. The yellow slits that formed Kurogyri's eyes widened slightly, the largest display of emotion anyone had ever seen from the Cloud Man, but his voice showed no hint of feelings. I see. I will inform your mother and father that you have brought a friend over. Tamura, please keep an eye on the boys while I see your parents. Yeah, whatever, Tamura drawled, turning on Nito with a wicked glint in his eyes. Listen, Blondie, wanna play video games? I've never tried a video game before, the blonde confessed, much to the horror of the brothers, who immediately dragged him into their game room, talking over each other about how to play their favorite racing game, leaving Kurogyri alone in the foyer. The man was quick to create a warp gate to All for One's office, thankful that the man seemed to be in a good mood and had no visitors. Master, Izuku-san and Tamura-san have brought a friend home, and Izuku-san seems to believe that they are cousins. The sparkle in All for One's eyes was unmistakable. They brought a friend over? That's wonderful. Wait, why does Izuku think they're related? Izuku-san said it's because he has a similar quirk to his friend. At the mention of a quirk, All for One instantly fell into a muttering spell. I haven't been with anyone besides Inko, so I know the child isn't mine. Did my little brother ever have children? No, there's no possible way. He was too sickly and he didn't have visitors in the vault. I made sure of that, unless that blasted second. He met the second at some point, or perhaps he decided knocking someone up was a good act of rebellion against me. But did he ever show interest in that? No, he was too obsessed with his comics and being a thorn in my side. Unless we had a secret sibling? I wouldn't put it past our parents to have a third child somewhere, but how could I have not known about another sibling? Master, Kurogiri said, having briefly poked his head through a portal, Izuku-san is currently attempting to make snacks for his friend, and he is climbing on a chair to grab a knife. Unless he had romance manga hidden in his comics that he learned the art of wooing from, oh, sure, Izuku can use a knife, wait. Take me home at once. Hisashi. Inko's voice called from the living room, can you come here for a minute? Hisashi practically leapt from his desk, happy to do anything for his wife. He was in a wonderful mood after Izuku's friend had come over for yet another playdate, and he hoped that Inko wanted to gush over their adorable little boys together. However, upon entering the room, it became clear that Inko was anything but happy. He opened his mouth to ask what was wrong, but Inko swiftly holding up a manila folder had the words dying in his throat. Hisashi, Inko started, a dangerous edge to her voice. Do you want to tell me exactly why you ordered a DNA test for Izuku's friend, specifically a paternity test? He instantly fell to his knees, hands clasped together in front of his chest. Inko, you're the only person I've ever loved. I know what this looks like, but I promise you I have never cheated on you. Izuku just said he thinks little Nito is his cousin and I couldn't get the idea out of my head, so I had to check. Please, I swear I've never loved anyone but you. I'd rather die before even thinking of being with anyone else. Oh, Hisashi, Inko said sweetly, a beautiful smile gracing her wonderful features, I know that you would never cheat on me. Any thought he had of replying was stopped dead in its tracks when Inko grabbed his chin and yanked his face up to make him look her in the eye, using a touch of her quirk to pull his spleen slightly. Because if you even had the tiniest thought of cheating on me, not even All Might himself could save you from the hell I'd rain on you. Hisashi shivered at the cold tone of her voice, looking up at her with all the love he had ever felt for her. My love, that dangerous streak is incredibly attractive, and it would be an honor to be slaughtered by you. But please don't, because I would much rather live a long life with you and our children. Inko's eyes softened as she planted a soft kiss on his lips. Oh, he loved his wife so much. You had better pray that Nito-kun is a distant relative, or else you're sleeping on the couch until Tamura goes to college. Hisashi gulped. They both knew that Tamura would rather voluntarily take medicine and get vaccinations before going to college, and tore open the envelope with shaky hands. Hisashi must have inadvertently saved an important world leader at some point in his long life because the words on the letter were written as plain as day. Minoma Nito was either extremely far removed from their family tree or not related whatsoever. Either way, Hisashi sighed in relief at being spared from the couch, sinking into a large armchair with his wife, wrapping an arm around her for a much-needed cuddle session. I love you, Hisashi, Inko said from her place, comfortably burrowed into his side, but the next time you think you've found a long-lost relative, you had better tell me first before doing anything at all. Why, dear? Hisashi gulped audibly. His wife could be extremely intimidating when she wanted to, but he absolutely adored that side of her, even when it was directed at him. Izuku loved quirks. Before he got his own quirk, before he knew the full extent of Daddy's quirk, Izuku loved seeing quirks in action. When he was 4 and barely able to write a full sentence, Izuku had used his favorite crayons to write about every quirk he could find. His first entries were obviously Mommy, Daddy, Nichan, and even Kurogiri. After all, they had the quirks Izuku loved the most. Except, sometimes Izuku got so excited about a quirk, he would forget to tell his family where he was going and just run off. He had gotten better about not letting his head get all fuzzy when he wanted to take a quirk, but he still had a hard time not asking questions when he saw someone with a super cool quirk. He just had to chase the person down and ask all kinds of questions about their quirk, just like the quirk analysis lessons he did with Daddy. The first time he had run off in public, Daddy nearly had a heart attack and cried for hours, even after Izuku came back. After the second time, Daddy gave Izuku his special tracker bracelet, so they could always find Izuku when he disappeared. Izuku's curiosity only grew when he met Taken, but how was he supposed to not be excited? Izuku could borrow people's quirks and play with them himself, and Taken could copy them. Sometimes if he played with them enough, Izuku could figure out how their users could use their quirks better, and that would be great practice for when him and Taken became pirates. Nichan called that playing Quirk Doctor, and liked to call Izuku Dr. Baby Brother when he was figuring out a quirk. He got really into being Dr. Baby Brother after Daddy gave him a little doctor's coat and Nichan gave him fancy doctor notebooks. So really, it wasn't surprising when Izuku saw someone with an interesting quirk at the supermarket and ran after them. He needed to ask questions about their quirk. He needed to play with it and feel what it was like to use it, needed to figure out how to master it. He had barely come within hearing range of the person when a strong arm pressed a cloth in front of his mouth and nose, restraining him while the world faded to black, too fast for him to press his button bracelet. Tamura had the day planned to perfection. Right now, he had lessons with Dad and Kurogiri. In half an hour, Baby Brother would come back from the supermarket with Mom. For 5 minutes, Baby Brother would show Tamura the snacks he convinced Mom to buy. After that, Tamura and Baby Brother would play games together for 2 hours, 30 minutes of which would be designated to helping Baby Brother master the controls and letting him win, the other 90 minutes Tamura winning and letting Baby Brother say how amazing he was. Mom calling Dad in a panic, shouting about Baby Brother going missing at the store was not part of Tamura's schedule. Dad's face going pale and promptly searching for Izuku's tracker made dread sink into Tamura's gut. And Dad closing his eyes and resorting to using a quirk to find Baby Brother only made Tamura feel like he couldn't breathe, waiting for Dad to say, "Surprise. It was a prank. Baby Brother just ran to get your favorite cereal." All for One's eyes snapped open, the red irises appearing as though they were burning, and looked down at Tamura. "Tamura, I have to go to your mother. She's having a panic attack and the idiots there can't figure out how to help her." Unfortunately, the police just had to get involved in this, and you know how they take far too long to handle anything. Tamura merely nodded, impatiently awaiting his instructions. "Tamura, I know you want to go find your brother," Sensei said, squatting down to his eye level. "Yes, Sensei," Tamura exclaimed, hands twitching with the desire to go. Sensei smiled sadly, looking a little more like Dad, and placed his large hand on Tamura's head. "I know this is going to be hard for you, but you can't go looking for him." Tamura felt his heart crumble into pieces, a garbled sound escaping his throat. "What? Why can't I go find Baby Brother?" Tamura began to shout, tears forming in his eyes. "I have to go look for him. I'm his big brother, it's my job to keep him safe and I failed." "Oh Tamura," Dad said, pulling him into a hug, "my sweet boy, I know that you want to run out there right now and find him, but that isn't safe for you or him. What if the kidnappers took him because they found out he's related to me? And if they found you too, they would have 2 of the people I care about the most." Dad pulled back, looking Tamura in the eye and wiping away the tears that had slipped out. "Tamura, I need you to stay here so I know that you'll be safe. I can't lose Izuku. Or you." Dad let go of Tamura, standing up straight as Kurogiri appeared in the room. "I have to go now, your mom is alone and needs support." He stepped into the portal, looking back at his oldest son right before disappearing. "I love you, Tamura. I'll be back with Izuku before you know it." Tamura fell to the ground, sitting in the room for what felt like hours, letting the events of the last few hours play in his mind and falling further into despair. For the last 7 years, Baby Brother had been his entire world, and Tamura didn't know what to do now that he was gone. The thought of Baby Brother, scared and alone, with someone that hurt him and took him made Tamura's skin itch more furiously than ever before. He wanted to scream, to run, to fight, to destroy. An electronic ping pulled Tamura out of his thoughts, standing up to investigate the origin of the sound, Sensei's computer, which had been left on in his haste. Tamura knew that he shouldn't look. Mom always told him it's not good to be nosy, but his Izuku sense told him that he needed to look at the screen. So, mustering up his courage, he approached the computer, red eyes widening at the screen before him. The general area of Baby Brother's panic button had been located. This was a secret quest, it had to be. He had chosen the right dialogue options and gotten the information for a super secret quest that would raise both his level and his bond with Baby Brother. Sure, Sensei had told him not to go, but only nasty heroes followed instructions, and Tamura was no hero. He was going to slaughter whoever had put their hands on his Baby Brother. In hindsight, it might have been easier to find Baby Brother if Tamura knew this area of town, but it's not his fault that he prefers staying inside. Besides, going outside is exactly what got Baby Brother kidnapped, so he would be sure to advocate against going outside ever again. Tamura had been wandering around for what felt like ages, getting more irritated the longer he couldn't find where Baby Brother was being held. Why couldn't Sensei's stupid tracker have shown a picture of the building? This map didn't have pictures of anything around here. Calm down, Tamura said to himself, taking a few deep breaths to clear his mind, just like Dad Sensei had taught him. Can't find Baby Brother if I'm getting angry. Don't think someone crazy enough to talk to themselves is gonna be finding anyone. Tamura jolted and whirled around, coming face to face with a surly-looking boy, probably a teenager, maybe just a few years older than himself, with white hair and bright blue eyes. You don't know what you're talking about, Tamura snarled, loosening his glove from one of his hands. My Baby Brother is missing and I'm going to find him before those idiot heroes mess it up. The teen raised an eyebrow at Tamura, an amused smirk on his face. Not a hero fan? Me neither. Gotta say though, don't see what a shrimp like you can do about your missing brother. Tamura's hand twitched violently. This teenager was beyond annoying and was interrupting his hunt for Baby Brother, and Sensei had once said Tamura could destroy anything that annoyed him. What's the kid look like anyway? The teen said coolly, might have seen him around. I'm not such a huge JRK that I won't say if I've seen him. Baby Brother has the best green hair that looks like a bush, and the best green eyes, and he's got freckles on his cheeks. Tamura recited like it was a prayer. He's this tall, he's 7 years old, and I'm gonna kill whoever it is that took him. That's the kid they sent out an alert for. My dumpster fire of a dad got it and stayed at work late because of it. The white-haired boy said sheepishly, sorry in advance, my dad's a hero and he doesn't exactly think before firing. That can't happen, Tamura shouted, body tensed at the thought of a hero hurting Baby Brother. If you don't want to be responsible for your father killing Baby Brother, then you better tell me where this is. He pulled out his phone and shoved the image of the map in the older boy's face. He stared at the picture for a bit and eventually snapped his fingers, recognition crossing his features. You're in luck, short stuff. That's an abandoned warehouse I go to when I need to burn things. Go that way down the street for 3 blocks, make a left, and walk until you get to the Pink Flamingo Bar. It's 3 buildings down the road from there, and it's covered in burn marks courtesy of yours truly. Finally, a useful NPC, Tamura said gleefully, a pleased and somewhat crazed smile gracing his features. He pulled out a scrap piece of paper from his pocket. He always carried paper for Baby Brother, and wrote something on it before shoving it in the other boy's hand. I don't have any real money, but this is my gaming account. Add me and send me the message, Baby Brother is the best, so I know it's you, and I'll pay you in credits once I find Baby Brother. Tamura ran off before the teen could respond, sprinting in the directions he had been given, ignoring the other boy's shouts that he doesn't play games. Don't worry, Baby Brother, Tamura thought as he ran, Nichan is coming to save you. Hisashi couldn't stand the police. All they did was slow things down, get in his way, and attempt to interfere with both his illegal and legal businesses. Hisashi despised having to sit here and play nice while the police worked far too slowly to find his baby boy. As much as he would like to mobilize the entirety of the underground to search, he did need to support his wife, who was having a far worse time since Izuku had been snatched away under her guard. It took every ounce of self-control in his body to not murder the officer that said Hisashi had to leave while they questioned Inko, but he contained himself for the sake of his wife. The officer gave a sympathetic, emphasis on pathetic, smile, reaching up to pat his shoulder in what was an attempt at being comforting. "It'll be all right, sir," the officer said. "We've got our best officers on the search for your son, and I just received confirmation that several heroes, including the number 2 hero, are also on the move. We'll find little Izuku in no time." Deep breaths, Hisashi thought to himself, jaw clenched shut as he stepped out of the station under the pretense of needing fresh air. The last thing he wanted was a bunch of heroes getting their hands on his baby, but the fact that Endeavor was now involved. To be frank, that scared him. He wasn't scared of the flame hero himself, as it would be laughably easy for him to completely destroy him, but Endeavor tended not to care about the safety of civilians when he went up against a villain. The thought of that poor excuse of a hero letting fire rage all over Hisashi's baby boy scared him more than anyone for all Holder ever had. Hisashi pulled out his phone. The time displayed over his home screen reminded him how long it had been since his son went missing, and he sighed as he entered a phone number from memory. It had been a while since he contacted this man, but the situation was dire enough to warrant using one of his many favors. Hisashi stepped into a dark alley, out of sight from any stray officers and using a quirk to shut off any prying cameras, and finally hit the call button. The phone rang 4 times before a deep and amused voice came through the line. "Good evening, master. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Jiren, all for one, said, "It's time to cash in one of the many favors I'm owed." "Of course, master. What can I do for you?" "I'm sure you've heard of the missing persons report for a young boy today that several heroes have been assigned to, including Endeavor. The boy that was kidnapped is my heir, and I presume that you know why I do not want the heroes to find him." "Yeah, I can see why you wouldn't want Endeavor saving him. I'll do some digging to see if I can find anything about the boy. He's the one with green eyes, green hair, and a green family name, right?" All for one silently pushed down a sudden lump in his throat at the mention of his son. "Yes, Midoriya-Izuku. I'd appreciate it if you could keep word of him being my heir quiet. Putting more of a target on his head would mean terrible things for the underworld." "Of course, master. We don't want anything else happening to the young master after all," Jiren replied dutifully. "I'll keep my ears open for any word of who took the kid, and I'll let you know the minute I hear anything." "See to it that you do, Jiren," all for one said, shutting the call off without the need for a response, waiting merely a few minutes for information to start pouring in regarding potential groups behind his son's kidnapping. Whoever had stolen his baby was about to learn exactly why any decent career criminal knew to never cross the king of the underworld. Hell is empty and the devil is an overprotective father. Tamura's chest heaved as he caught his breath, standing outside of the massive abandoned chocolate factory. White-haired boy hadn't lied, which Tamura was grateful for, but his baby brother being held captive inside a Billy Bonkus chocolate warehouse seemed like a bad subplot in a mediocre TV show. There was a method to getting baby brother back, as one couldn't simply barge into a building without any reconnaissance. There weren't any windows low enough for Tamura to look inside, so he found himself climbing up the fire escape of the ratty apartment complex next door. He clambered on the rooftop and hunched on the edge of the building, straining to see through the darkness and into the chocolate warehouse. After his eyes adjusted, he could make out a few figures walking around inside, but he couldn't spot baby brother from this angle. Tamura was quick to change his spot, leaning just a bit further over the edge, sking in a sharp breath at the sight of curly green hair that looks like a bush, baby brother's green. He didn't even realize he was about to topple over the edge of the building until something wrapped around his waist and shoulders, yanking him away from the edge of the roof. He would deny letting out the initial yelp, but wouldn't deny the second yelp when he came face to face with a pro hero that baby brother had studied extensively, Eraserhead. "What exactly is someone as young as you doing on a rooftop this late at night?" the hero demanded, a strange look in his otherwise expressionless face. Tamura's head began playing the familiar sound of baby brother's quirk analysis lessons. Eraserhead, the erasure hero. Quirk, erasure. Can nullify any quirk through eye contact. Conceals eyes with goggles, but can tell when quirk is activated when his hair floats. Normally Tamura never cared to remember any heroes, But he had paid special attention to the heroes that had helped him find baby brother in a mall less than a year ago. If they helped you find him once, his mind broke through thoughts of how to kill Eraserhead, then he might be willing to help you again. My baby brother was kidnapped, Tamura said quickly, deciding to use the hero to his advantage, and I looked everywhere and found him here. The hero's eyes narrowed. How did you track your brother to here? He had a phone, Tamura lied. I know how to use my phone to find where his is, so I tracked it to somewhere around here, then I found some teenager that told me he saw suspicious people coming here. Eraserhead seemed to believe his story, turning to look through the warehouse window. Is your brother the one with green eyes and green hair? The son of that famous quirk analysis guy, Shigaraki? Baby brother has the best green eyes and the best green hair, Tamura said firmly, getting the strangest feeling of déjà vu. And that's our dad. He went to the police station to help mom. And your father left you alone during a stressful event, Eraserhead deadpanned, making Tamura's instincts flare up defensively. Wasn't alone. I had a babysitter, but I pretended to be asleep and snuck out the window when the idiot fell asleep for real. The hero stared at Tamura for a little too long, turning away from the boy with a whisper of, "Problem child," under his breath. You're lucky I was around here, kid. There's 7 full-grown adults in there at least, and it definitely looks like your brother is also there. Eraserhead fixed his burning gaze on Tamura, cutting off any demands the boy was about to make. You're not going in there. You are going to sit here, you can watch through the windows, but you do not go inside. Understand? Without even waiting for a response, the hero's scarf launched forward, grabbing onto something on the warehouse's roof and climbing atop the building. Tamura had to admit, watching the guy slip silently into the warehouse through the roof, that this hero seemed pretty alright. Master, I have received word that Eraserhead has found Izuku and is about to engage the group holding him hostage. Excellent. But Master, it seems that there's another young boy on the scene. A slightly older one with blue hair. Master? Make sure Eraserhead saves Izuku and take note of those holding him hostage. And the other boy? See to it that he isn't injured. He is going to be grounded for life. Eraserhead was more than alright, he was so cool. Tamura gaped stupidly at the hero who was swinging around and beating up bad guys like the characters in his games did, too shocked and awestruck to even think about being upset he wasn't the one to rescue baby brother. The way his hair floated everywhere when he used his quirk, wrapping that scarf around the kidnappers and throwing them around like they were weightless, it made fighting in real life look so cool. It made Tamura want to take his training seriously so he could fight for real too. A wicked grin split Tamura's face right as Eraserhead flung a kidnapper against the window. If he learned how to fight like Eraserhead, then he could look even cooler and he could protect baby brother too. Not to mention, getting to throw people around like that seemed like it would be so fun to do before decaying them. You alright up there? The hero's voice rang out from the roof of the warehouse right as he jumped over the gap, his scarf noticeably bundled around something. Baby brother! Tamura lunged at before the hero could even land, tugging at the incredibly tough fabric, desperate for a glimpse of green. Eraserhead loosened the scarf, finally letting the boy see his baby brother, but Tamura was fast to notice that baby brother's eyes were closed and his head flopped backwards. Baby brother? Tamura's hands were shaking and his throat felt so unbearably dry. Baby brother, it's me. You're safe now, we can wake up now. But the little boy didn't budge, didn't wake up and start crying for his Nichan's hugs, and Tamura felt like the air was pulled out of his lungs. Why is he not awake? Tamura sobbed, looking up at the hero supporting baby brother's neck. What's wrong with baby brother? Looks like the little guy tried using his quirk and tired himself out, Eraserhead said, voice gruff and soft all at the same time. I've got an ambulance on the way just in case he's hurt, but it looks like a case of quirk exhaustion to me. Your parents are going to meet us at the hospital. Tamura nodded blankly, the words barely registering in his head as he clutched his baby brother's arm. Don't worry, kid. A warm hand fell on Tamura's head. He's gonna be alright. Just needs to rest up a bit at the hospital and he'll be okay. The hero stayed on the rooftop with the brothers until the ambulance arrived, frequently checking Izuku's condition and keeping a grounding hand on Tamura not stopping even when they all clambered into the ambulance together. Eraserhead didn't leave when they finally got to the hospital, not when they were placed in a hospital room, and not even when Mom and Dad ran in worried about them. Tamura was so shocked by the hero's behavior. Since when did heroes actually care about people? All they ever did was ignore him when he wanted help, leave him to fend for himself on the streets, not bothering to help anyone if no cameras were in sight. Yet, why was this hero so different? What was it about Eraserhead that made him actually care and be nice, like Dad was when he found Tamura on the streets? It made something flutter in Tamura's chest as he watched Eraserhead speak to Dad, telling him about how he found Baby Brother and his suspected quirk exhaustion, listening when his parents explained Baby Brother's borrowing quirk, and even comforting Mom and telling her it wasn't her fault that he ran off and got kidnapped. And that's when it hit him. The reason Eraserhead was a good hero that cared about people was because he was the only hero as nice as his dad. Nobody but Tamura's family was ever nice like that. Having to add someone else, a pro-hero at that, to his list of good people made the blue-haired boy realize something very important. Dad was his favorite hero, but Eraserhead was cool enough to be his second favorite. The Shigaraki Midoriya family was all piled together on their couch, a movie quietly playing in the background while the children slept on their parents. Izuku had only needed some rest after overusing his quirk on his kidnappers. "I took all their quirks," the little boy whispered tiredly on the way back home. "I didn't want to, but I was scared." And Tamura had been thoroughly scolded for disobeying his father and running off without telling anyone. "I might be disappointed, but I am proud of you," Hisashi had said. "You love your brother so much that you were willing to go against orders to find him. That's the kind of love that can push you to greater heights." But the family all knew that they were simply happy to finally be together. Unwilling to let the boys out of their sight as they were still a bit shaken up from the ordeal, Inko had suggested they all form a cuddle pile and watch a movie together, which everyone readily agreed with. It hadn't taken long at all for Izuku to fall asleep, physically and emotionally exhausted. Feeling secure surrounded by his family, Tamura followed suit not long after, tired from running around the city in a frantic search for his baby brother. Inko was running her fingers through Izuku's curls, holding him close to her chest as though he might disappear again, her head laid on Hisashi's shoulder. Her husband had an arm wrapped around both her and Tamura, who was sandwiched between his parents and holding onto Izuku's sock. "My associate found out why they took him," Hisashi whispered. "They heard of a boy with a quirk like mine and were attempting to make him give them stronger quirks. Then they were going to offer him to all for one as an offer for a partnership. They were going to send a ransom note to us after he changed their quirks, but weren't going to return him." Inko's arms tightened protectively around the little boy in her arms while remaining careful as to not wake him. "I know you plan on dealing with them yourself," Inko said quietly, "but they stole my baby too. Hisashi, please let me put them in jail before you do your thing." "Of course, my love," he said, leaning down to softly kiss her head. "I wouldn't dare do anything to them without letting you serve your revenge first." They fell into silence. Although Hisashi could tell there was something on Inko's mind, no quirk needed. He was just a man so in love with his wife that he knew when something was wrong. "Inko, everyone who's even vaguely familiar with my association knows that I refuse to get children involved. Those people that kidnapped Izuku had nothing to do with me and were simply trying to get my attention without doing any research to learn how they should." Inko sighed, sinking into her husband's arm and adjusting the blanket atop Tamura. "I know that, Hisashi, but it still scares me that someone would go to those lengths just to make an impression. Sometimes I wish that you didn't have to do your job and could just stay home with me and our kids. What if someone else tries to hurt our family? What if something happens to you? How would I ever explain it to the boys if you didn't come home one day?" I know that I can't promise I'll be safe at all times," Hisashi began, shifting in his seat. "But I will do everything in my power to make sure that you and our children are never unwillingly involved. All of my underlings and associates already know to never go near you three, and I can ask my close confidants to keep an eye out for any dangerous talk." "I can't ask any more of you," Inko whispered, "but if I could wish for one thing, it would be that you could achieve your goal in a less dangerous way." Hisashi's breath hitched, emotions charged again at her words. "Inko, my love, I will promise you this," he said, gently turning her head to look her in the eyes. The moment I find a way to do things in a safer way, I swear to you that I will take it. As Hisashi spoke, he felt like something was binding him to his words, creating a vow that would hang over his head and could never be broken. I will drop villainy at once if it is ever possible, and all for one will cease to exist. In the weeks following his kidnapping, Izuku did not leave the safety of his home. The thought of going outside scared not only him but his family as well, and he was more than content to stay inside as the child therapist helped him overcome his newfound fear of strangers. The downside of such an energetic boy staying indoors was that he no longer had an outlet for his boundless energy and soon became irritable and restless. He could only run around the house so much before his mind sought out new methods of entertainment, and no amount of books could keep the boy sated for long. It was inevitable, really, that he would resort to turning his energy to video games. His big brother was a certified gamer, after all, and had practically raised his baby brother to also love them. However, Izuku had spent very little time actually playing the games, being content to sit next to his Nichan and cheer him on while he played. Really, the only games that Izuku would play were two-player games, because why would he even play if he couldn't play with his big brother? Tamura certainly wasn't complaining when his baby brother developed a sudden interest in playing games, and he was more than happy to play round after round if it made him happy. He had finally got him hooked on some easier single-player games, but they mostly stuck with their favorite racing game Mario Kart. They proceeded to pour hours into the game, unlocking every track and vehicle, mastering their chosen cars, and becoming nothing but absolute beasts. However, Tamura was a bit competitive. Alright, a bit was a massive understatement. He took major pride in being the indiscriminate best at every game he played, especially the games he played with baby brother, because how could he call himself a gamer if he didn't win? He might be a villain in training, but he was a gamer first. There was a routine when baby brother would play with him, and it always went one of two ways. If it was a single-player game, he was supposed to get stuck, ask Tamura for help, and praise him when finished the level for him. If they were playing a competitive two-player game, then Tamura would absolutely crush baby brother every round, watch his reactions carefully, then right as soon as baby brother was about to get upset, Tamura would throw a single match and let him win. That was the routine, and Tamura hated when things didn't go accordingly. So, baby brother's newfound desire to win at Mario Kart came with the consequence that baby brother got really, really good at it. He improved so fast, testing out strategies and exploiting tricks that he had seen Tamura use before, filling Tamura's chest with a strange mix of pride and apprehension. For crying out loud, baby brother had nearly won a match. He almost won. That was not supposed to happen. Baby brother was supposed to always need help, to always come to Tamura for help, to always be a little less good than Tamura. Now that baby brother was nearly on an equal skill level, it made his skin itch. Because if baby brother got too good, then he wouldn't need to ask for Tamura's help, Tamura wouldn't be a challenge for him anymore, and baby brother wouldn't want to play with him anymore. And that thought did not sit well with Tamura. He couldn't let baby brother get close to winning a race ever again, and that meant Tamura needed to learn some new tricks. He practiced on his own as much as he could, discovering new shortcuts and improving his personal best times, but it wasn't enough. He had hit a wall that he couldn't seem to overcome and was about to decay their game system when he dropped his controller, the impact causing it to hit a menu item Tamura had never chosen before. He stared at the screen for a bit, curiosity taking hold of him, and he found himself agreeing to something about his profile. He didn't exactly read what the screen said, but he didn't care. His TV was filled with the best race times of all kinds of players, and it was amazing. He clicked on the top racer displayed on the screen and was astounded by the incredible tactics and shortcuts these players used to win. And their times, they were so fast. Tamura just had to try their shortcuts, because he would absolutely crush baby brother with these kinds of techniques. Except these techniques were insanely hard to pull off. As it turned out, they all relied on pressing buttons at the perfect second or lining a vehicle up at the perfect pixel, and Tamura once again found himself getting frustrated at his failure to execute these moves despite having tried for hours. He was reaching for his pillow to scream into when the door to the game room opened and his adorably green baby brother ran inside, looking at the game on the screen with an excited gasp. "Nichan, are you gonna play Mario Kart? Can I play with you please?" It was time. Tamura couldn't say no to him. It was physically impossible to deny baby brother, and he just knew this was the universe aligning to give him one last chance to show he's still the best. Sure, baby brother, let's play. Things were not looking good for Tamura. Baby brother had come far too close to winning the previous races, and he was currently ahead of Tamura by a lot. No trick he had tried had helped him climb into first place, and he was quickly realizing that baby brother was going to beat him for real if he couldn't manage to overtake him. Nichan, I'm winning! Baby brother shouted, a cheeky grin on his face as he zipped around a sharp turn. I'm really winning. Tamura's jaw clenched, and in less than a second, he noticed the entrance to one of the crazy shortcuts he hadn't been able to perform yet and steered his car directly towards it, buttons rapidly yet precisely hitting the commands necessary to execute the trick. And suddenly he was flying, vehicle cutting across the racetrack at impossible speeds. Tamura could feel adrenaline flooding his veins, abruptly spotting yet another shortcut and somehow managing to perfectly use that one as well. He didn't dare take a breath, completely focused on driving his car, crossing the finish line and jolting at the finish banner flashing across the screen. It hadn't even been a minute yet, and he had somehow managed to complete 3 whole laps around the track. Tamura, still in shock, barely registered it when a couple of minutes later, baby brother drove across the finish line and dropped his controller to gape at Tamura's time displayed on the screen. Nin, Izuku said reverently, you're so amazing. How'd you do that? It was so crazy and cool. You're the best at video games. Tamura's face felt like it was on fire as his body and brain finally caught up to speed. He had seriously just pulled off those tricks that the racers online did, and they could only do one at a time. He had done at least 2. Maybe even 3. He couldn't remember the last 20 seconds of the race anymore. He didn't even bother hiding his smug smile when his profile name, Dust Bunny, his and baby brother's shared account, showed his time when compared to the players he had watched earlier in the day. Hey, baby brother. Tamura picked up his controller, excitement positively radiating from him. Wanna see me do that on a different track? His little green brother's beaming grin and excited bouncing was all the answer he needed, and Tamura was more than happy to show off the skills he had picked up on his quest to be the best. By the end of the day, after having finished dozens of tracks in his best time ever, Tamura's goal had been accomplished 100 times over. Baby brother still knew that Tamura was the best gamer in the world. Shigaraki Hisashi, for all the freedoms and privileges he gave his son, was a protective parent at heart. He had reason enough to monitor any mention of his family, especially after Izuku's kidnapping just a few weeks prior, and had therefore set up programs to monitor any sudden increase in keywords related to his wife and sons. He nearly had a heart attack when his computer screen lit up with a notification from the program about thousands of online accounts suddenly talking about the boy's shared gaming account. He didn't hesitate to immediately click on the website where most of the discussion was happening, hands shaking in anticipation and fear of what he might find. What if someone had traced their IP address? What if someone had hacked into their account and dug up information about his villain empire? Somehow? What if Izuku had accidentally mentioned the truth of his quirk? What if they somehow shared his credit card information with thousands of strangers? Did they even know what a credit card was? Hisashi felt his blood run cold when he realized their game account name Dust Bunny was plastered in the headlines of several news articles, reading them no less than 10 times each to take in what they meant. New speedrunner Dust Bunny sets over 15 Mario Kart world record times in one day. Dust Bunny makes unbelievable Mario Kart leaderboard debut with a dozen world records. This new speedrunner got sub 2 minutes in nearly 20 tracks, but who is Dust Bunny? Top Mario Kart players lose world records to hotshot new runner Dust Bunny. Is Dust Bunny using ROM hacks or bots? Watch this analysis to find out. Hisashi blinked at the headlines, blankly reading through article after article, and soon found himself laughing at the situation at hand. Kurogyri, he called, standing as the misty man appeared in his office. I'll be taking a quick break to check on my sons. Of course, master. He opened a warp gate at once, the sounds of the boy's playful shouts streaming through before he had even stepped through. You're so good at racing. Izuku's adorable voice greeting Hisashi's ears, the little boy staring at Tamura with stars in his eyes while he played the very game making headlines. Course I am, I told you I'm the best at games. Hello boys, Hisashi chuckled, squatting down and opening his arms to embrace his sons, who had promptly gasped and dropped their game to sprint towards him. Daddy, Nichan's so amazing. Dad, I did something really cool in this racing game, come and see. He smiled, allowing himself to be pulled over to the couch and sat down between his children. The boys were chattering away, with Tamura showing off his new tricks while Izuku sang his praises. His eldest son had just finished yet another ridiculously fast race, his time displayed right next to the name Dust Bunny when he received a notification on his phone that the mysterious new racer had once again set a new record, sparking even more furious debate regarding the identity of the player. Tamura, Hisashi spoke up between matches. Did you turn on internet access for this game? I don't think so. I just pushed some buttons so I could see some people's races, but I didn't really read anything on the screen. The man sighed but refrained from saying anything, mentally scheduling a refresher course about internet safety. He also decided to keep Tamura's sudden world record status to himself, as it would either inflate his ego or increase his anxiety. For now, he was content to keep that little secret to himself in favor of watching his kids have fun with each other. Hey Nichan, do you think other games have really cool shortcuts? That I don't know, but now I want to find out. Let's figure out how to beat all the games together, baby brother. Tamura wouldn't admit that he had been waiting for the white-haired boy to message him for his payment, but he was definitely doing just that. He absolutely despised being indebted to anyone, and the fact that he had yet to pay back someone who had helped him rescue baby brother made him feel rather frustrated. For the past 2 weeks, he would wake up to his account suddenly flooded with message requests sent by people trying to add him, but none of them had included the key phrase he gave to the white-haired boy. It was annoying, digging through so many useless messages every day, searching for the right one but coming out empty-handed. It was making his gameplay sloppy, and he was just about ready to quit in a fit of rage when he got a notification for another message request. He was so sick and tired of getting these random messages. Why the heck were people trying to message his and baby brother's account? He almost decided to just turn his console off, but his curiosity got the better of him as he opened the message from a user named No Heat All Cheats. Baby brother is the best. That is what I was supposed to say, right? Tamura nearly dropped his controller in shock, fumbling to type his response. He had finally got the secret message and could repay the boy. Are you the boy with white hair? Yeah? I mean, I have white hair, but so do my older brother and sister. Doesn't matter. Do you play Animal Crossing? I can send you bells for that if you want, but I also have Pokemon if you want to trade a legendary. I play both, so either one works for me. Also, my big brother was the one who helped you find your brother, but he gave me the paper since he doesn't play games. Is your little brother okay? Tamura raised an eyebrow at the words on the screen. So this wasn't the white-haired boy he had met, but the baby brother of that boy who also happened to have white hair. It wasn't exactly ideal, but seeing that the older boy didn't like games annoyed Tamura even more. He couldn't possibly leave a fellow gamer in the dust. Yeah, he's okay. The idiots that took him are in jail now. I just sent over your bells. So your brother doesn't like games? What's wrong with him? Thanks. And I know. I keep trying to get my siblings to play with me, but no one wants to. Tamura was reeling from this revelation, unable to imagine a life where baby brother didn't want to play games. This kid must be being tortured at home. He was just about to offer to threaten his family when another message came through. You seem cool though. Do you want to play Mario Maker together? I've been dying to play this one stage, but it works best with a teammate. Tamura felt his hands begin to shake in pure joy. Baby brother refused to play because he felt bad killing the Yoshi, or whatever, and Tamura has needed someone to finish team quests with for a long time. Sure. We can play now if you want. I don't do voice chat though, 'cause I tried it once but people say really nasty things. That mom doesn't want me or baby brother to hear. That's actually better for me too. My dad yells a lot and it's really distracting to hear that over the game. Anyway, let's go play. As it turns out, No Heat was a really good player. They were a perfect match for Tamura's skill. They weren't annoying at all and, dare he say it, really cool. Not as cool as baby brother, mind you, but definitely a close second, but only because No Heat would play the games baby brother didn't like and kept Tamura less lonely when baby brother was having playdates with Blondie. Not to mention, No Heat actually said that he didn't like Heroes that much, which was huge. Everyone in the chat room said they all loved Heroes. They were finishing so many quests and leveling up together. The second best part of Tamura's day was playing games with No Heat. The best part was obviously every minute with baby brother, and they had even made a third friend along the way, a really good sword player named Smallzilla. Smallzilla said they didn't like Heroes that much either, and people in his town were J-Arcs because of his quirk, which meant they fit in perfectly with Tamura. Honestly, Tamura was really happy to have his gaming friends, even if Smallzilla was a bit weird when Tamura first messaged him. He asked if he was the same dust bunny that just set a bunch of world records, but Tamura said no since didn't remember setting any world records. Hi, Nichan. Baby brother ran into the game room, dragging his friend Blondie in behind him. Taken told me he's doing a really fun thing in school called theater club. He gets to pretend to be all kinds of characters and even dress up in fun costumes. That's called cosplaying. Tamura rolled his eyes in false annoyance. Blondie's doing cosplay for school. It's not cosplaying, Blondie stomped his foot. Theater is so different from cosplay. I have to totally act like the character, not just dress up as them. Theater is harder than cosplay. Cosplay isn't easy, it's a dignified form of art. Theater is art. I think cosplay and theater are super fun. Baby brother cheered, diffusing the budding argument between Tamura and Blondie. I want to do theater and cosplay. But Izuken, Blondie spoke up, tugging on baby brother's sleeve. You have to get up on a stage in front of lots of people and remember what to say and how to move. Tamura wanted to giggle at the way baby brother's face went pale, suddenly mumbling that maybe he would be okay just watching theater, but he contained himself since he was a good big brother. Besides, it was nearly time for his daily gaming with No Heat and Smallzilla, and having to comfort a sulky baby brother would cut into his playtime. Oh, Nichan. Taken told me something really cool. Tell him too, Taken. Blondie sighed with a smile. One of my cousins is coming to visit soon, and she's around our age. Baby brother was shaking with excitement. Isn't that great? Our cousin is bringing more cousins. And maybe this cousin can be your friend so you can have a cousin friend too. She's kind of weird though, Blondie muttered. She's always talking about liking the taste of blood and tried to bring a dead bird inside. It smelled weird. Lots of people like different things. Izuku continued on, ignoring Blondie's hesitance. Daddy's doctor friend likes to do science things on dead animals, and Daddy told me that's normal for scientists. I don't think I want to be a scientist though, because I don't like seeing Mommy cut up meat before she cooks it. I don't need a cousin friend, Tamura deadpanned, perking up when his game lobby with No Heat and Smallzilla opened. Besides, I already have friends. You do. Izuku and Blondie spoke at the same time, the former overjoyed and the latter unbelieving. Baby brother ran to Tamura's side, eyes sparkling and questions spilling out. Who's your friend? Can I meet them? Do they want to come over? Do they like games? Do they like playing pirates? My friends don't want to come over. Tamura interrupted his brother's questioning when he finally took a breath, and I met them in a game. No Heat's big brother helped me find you when you went missing, and Smallzilla is really good at the ninja characters. I don't know if they like pirates, but I can ask if they want to play a pirate-themed game. Izuku nodded in thought, finally jumping off of the couch to rejoin Blondie. You should ask about the pirate game and then let me play too. Taken gets to play a pirate for theater. What's the pirate's name, Taken? I forgot. It's Captain Hook, Blondie said, his chest puffing in pride from being the object of baby brother's attention. He's one of the main characters in the play. He's the pirate captain. Sounds fancy, Tamura drawled, focused on typing a message to his friends about the pirate game. Are you two going to sit here and watch or go play somewhere else? Whatcha playing, Nichan? Tamura's eyes scanned over the messages he received. Mario Maker. And my friends said they don't mind trying out that game. And that you sound like a cute baby brother. Am not cute, Izuku mumbled, cheeks firetruck red and hidden behind his hands. Not cute. Tamura scoffed, turning to Blondie with fire in his eyes. Blondie, Do you think baby brother is not cute? The blonde stared at Tamura before grinning viciously. Sorry, Izuken, but I gotta agree. You're super cute. Taken. The cutest baby brother I've ever had. Anishan, I'm your only baby brother. Alright then, the cutest baby brother in the world. Tamura smiled in satisfaction as his baby brother crumpled to the floor in an embarrassed heap, still being lovingly teased by Blondie. He turned to start his game with his online friends, his heart feeling really happy and jumpy just from being able to play with his friends. He actually had friends. He glanced over at baby brother and Blondie, smiling at the way they were. Gleefully playing together, was really happy that he and baby brother finally had friends. Maybe one day he could see his friends in real life too. Or maybe not. Talking to people was really tiring and annoying. Doctor, has any progress been made with the experiments? All for one towered over the portly doctor, both in size and sheer overwhelming presence, as the doctor walked behind him through a mass of massive liquid-filled tubes. While progress has been made, it is nowhere close to the levels we were able to achieve with test subject. How is he holding up, by the way? Still stable as ever. I see. Since we are having trouble blending quirks in such a seamless way, I theorize that Subject 7 was only successful due to quirk compatibility. Dr. Garaki paused his speech, thinking over his next words carefully. It would be much easier to determine quirk compatibility if the young master's quirk was used. Absolutely not. All for One's voice was firm and cold. He will not be involved in things such as this while he is still so young. We must learn to do this on our own, or are you saying that our intelligence is no match for the skills of a child? Of course not, Master. I was simply saying it would take less time. It can certainly be done without the young master's quirk splicing, but it will take longer. If it pleases you, I can have the current experiments brought out for analysis and observation. Bring them out. Explain the current progress in the meantime. Yes, Master. The current experiments cannot maintain independent thought or consciousness to the degree Subject 7 can. Subjects 16 through 25 have the highest mobility and cognitive function, but they rely completely on commands to act. Their quirks still function on the most basic level, but anything that requires higher levels of brain function to activate cannot be done. The current subjects work best with passive quirks that are always on, such as strength and speed quirks, and Subject 22 was able to regenerate a wound acquired during testing through its regeneration quirk. The doctor gestured to the experiments floating in the tubes, each one labeled according to their subject number. As of now, any quirks more complex than constantly active quirks cannot be activated, such as Subject 19's water manipulation quirk, which requires the user to consciously activate it. The current projected timeline shows that experiments on the same cognitive level as Subject 7 will be feasible within 5 years. You said the subjects rely completely on commands to act, the villain said, eyes fixed on the experiments being carefully removed from the tubes. Elaborate on that. Yes, Master. When not being commanded, the subjects will stay completely immobile while waiting for directions, as they lack both independent thought and decision-making skills. Upon being given a direct command, the subjects will immediately execute it in the most straightforward manner. I see. Possessing more than one quirk puts one in a comatose state, as we know, so I believe that Subject 7's quirks were so compatible they completely merged into just one quirk. My son has learned that even he is unable to seamlessly blend every quirk together. He described it as trying to force a puzzle piece into the wrong spot. So learning the science behind quirk compatibility will most likely lead to the creation of experiments with higher executive function. Of course, Master. I will study Subject 7's data closely. And if the young master makes any more progress with his studies, please send all relevant information this way. That can be managed. Now, show me what these creations can do. Izuku loved going to his best friend's house. Taken's parents were really nice. He had lots of really fun books to read, and he had lots of family members that visited all the time. Like that one cousin he met a few weeks ago, she immediately said Izuku's blood would be cute and tried to bite him, which made Nichan really angry and he tried to dust her, but at least she was friendly, just like Taken. But the best part about Taken's house was his dog, a little yippy thing named Inoki. Inoki barked a lot and was always angry, but Izuku absolutely adored that dog, not caring when she nipped at his fingers or gave him dirty looks. Sometimes, Inoki would let Izuku pet her or play fetch. Those days were the best. Izuku knew that Nichan liked dogs too. One time Izuku had asked if he had any happy stories about his before family, and Nichan said that his puppy Manchan was very nice and cute. Nichan didn't go over to Taken's house much, but every time he did he would stare at Inoki like he was contemplating stealing her. He said he wouldn't though, because Inoki was too angry all the time and she wasn't cute like corgis. Izuku wanted to disagree because he thought all dogs were cute, but then Nichan showed him a picture of a corgi. He had to admit, they looked so cute and clean compared to Inoki. She looked like a half-drowned rat and had an ego the size of a Great Dane, but he would never say that out loud. Mommy always taught him that it's the inside that makes someone beautiful. To make things perfectly clear, Izuku was incredibly jealous of Taken, all because he had a pet that he got to play with, and it was painfully obvious to his family that he was feeling that way. As someone who rarely ever felt jealousy, the last time he had shown such intense envy was when he was 5 and attempting to surprise share quirks with his family. He really had no practice hiding it. He had been silently sulking and moping around for nearly a week, head drooping at the mere sight of any animals in his cartoons or walking down the street, and it wasn't much longer before someone broke. "Izuku, sweetie," Inko said one day at breakfast, having noticed her youngest son sighing over a picture of shelter kittens in Hisashi's discarded morning newspaper. "What's got you feeling so down?" "Nothing, Mommy," the boy lied, "not very well either," pushing his breakfast around his bowl. "Izuku, remember what we said about keeping our feelings secret? If I keep them all inside it'll make them so big that my tummy will hurt and I'll get wrinkles like Nichan." "Yes. Well, not wrinkles, but you'll get stressed out and overwhelmed like your brother does. Now come on, would you like to tell me what's on your mind?" "It's just, Taken has a dog, and other kids get to have pets, and I really want a pet too," Izuku said with a pout, the full force of his puppy eyes fixed on Inko. "Nichan likes dogs too. He told me he used to have a puppy, and I really want a pet to play with." Inko felt her heart drop at her son's pleading. "Oh, Izuku, if I could get you a dog or cat I would, but I'm allergic to dogs and your father is allergic to cats. We would get really sick if we had a pet in the house." "I understand, Mommy." Izuku's voice was quiet and shaky, eyes glistening with building tears, and Inko couldn't help but gather him into her arms for comfort. "Sweetie, I'm so sorry that we can't get you a pet. I can take you to lots of cat cafes so you can still play with the kittens." "It's okay," Izuku sighed, face buried in her shirt. "I can play Nichan's old game about puppies. It's close enough to a pet." Inko felt her heart break when Izuku began to squirm around, slipping out of her arms with a mumble of needing to get his homework for school. She hated seeing her baby so downtrodden and resigned, but she couldn't exactly fix it with a traditional pet. Maybe they could get something without fur, like a snake or a lizard. Inko shuddered at the thought of a snake in the house and quickly removed that option from her mental list. Perhaps a bird, although birds did tend to be incredibly loud, and both herself and her husband valued their quiet time. Maybe a rabbit? Did allergies to cats and dogs include allergies to rabbits? She would have to speak with Hisashi about a solution to this dilemma. "Boys, are you ready to go?" Hisashi asked, watching his sons scramble around to shove their notebooks and lunches into their backpacks. Izuku bounded towards him, vibrating in excitement while Tamura trudged forward, a bit peeved at having to do lessons in the morning instead of the afternoon like always. "Yeah." Izuku was bouncing in place. "Why are we doing school so early, Daddy?" "Well, we are having a very special hands-on lesson today. It's going to take a bit longer than usual, so we need to start earlier as well." "I hope it doesn't take too long," Tamura grumbled. "I want to play games with my friends today." "I think you'll enjoy your lesson," Hisashi smiled at his boys, "because it's an interactive game." "A game?" Izuku gasped while Tamura's eyes lit up at the mention of a game. "What kind of game? Is it a racing game? Or a puzzle game? Or one of Nichan's story games?" "Story game? Oh, Tamura, I hope you're not letting your brother watch you play any inappropriate visual novels." "No way," Tamura grimaced at the thought, I only play good dating sims, the gross stuff is in the bad ones. Besides, I don't like the gross endings. Good, good, Hisashi sighed in relief, quickly guiding his sons through Kurogiri's gate. As for your lesson, we will be practicing gathering evidence to make logical deductions and draw conclusions, along with properly disposing of all incriminating evidence. Tamura glanced around the room, taking note of the extreme change in decor and setup. So, it's an escape room? I think it's a treasure hunt. Izuku declared, eyes fixed on a decorative map hanging on the wall, like how pirates find treasure. You're both right, Hisashi said, taking their backpacks and handing them off to Kurogiri. This is an escape room with a special prize if you find the way out and solve the mystery. Tamura grinned wickedly. He absolutely loved escape rooms, hands twitching with the desire to begin. What's the story? What's the main quest? I'm glad you asked. Hisashi produced 2 folders from behind his back, handing one to each boy. You two are leaders of a pirate crew, but one of your crew members has betrayed you and aided your arch-nemesis in capturing you. You have 2 main goals: find out which crewmate is the traitor, uncover the location of your enemy's treasure in order to take it, and escape before your enemy returns. Izuku's folder contains the information you need to begin searching for evidence, and Tamura's has the instructions for destroying the evidence once you have finished with it. You will also be given 3 hints, but only if you both agree that you need them. That's so cool. We're pirate captains. I'm Captain Green Thief, and you're Captain Dust Hands. Okay, baby brother, Tamura laughed at Izuku's excitement. What's our enemy's name? Izuku thought for a moment, eyes settling on one of Tamura's disembodied hands in his hoodie pocket. Captain Father, 'cause Father was mean to you. Tamura's eyes widened briefly, darting forward to hug his little brother. I can't wait to get revenge on Captain Father. Dad, do we have a time limit? Hisashi faked a cough, hiding his sappy smile behind his hand. Tamura thought he was better than his horrible biological father. That meant he was a good dad. And clearing his throat. Your time is unlimited, but if you manage to escape in under 2 hours, you'll be given the treasure your nemesis has hidden away. Now, are you ready to begin your challenge? Yes. Izuku and Tamura shouted in unison, not bothering to wait for a countdown as they flung open their folders to pore over their evidence. Hisashi took his place in a quiet corner of the temporary room, silently observing them hard at work and making notes of which skills needed to be refined. It was a sight to see, Izuku swiftly organizing every bit of evidence in a notebook, where had that come from, and Tamura quickly making the necessary connections to find the next clues. Hisashi had been concerned that the boys wouldn't be able to work together, since Tamura tended to be very commandeering when it came to games and Izuku would get stuck in his own head when thinking something through, but he was pleasantly surprised to find that he had been wrong. It had barely been an hour before Tamura was decaying the last clue, an envelope with a cipher containing the passcode to the exit door, and Izuku was mixing the dust in with the ashes in the fireplace. It only took them 5 more minutes to crack the cipher and eagerly enter the code, screaming in glee when the door audibly unlocked, throwing it open and turning towards their dad with the biggest grins on their adorable faces. Good job, boys. Hisashi clapped his hands, walking to stand in front of the door and ruffle their hair. Now, since you have thoroughly beaten the game in record speed, it's time for you to collect your reward. I hope it's a new game, Tamura muttered at the same time Izuku said, I hope it's a really soft stuffed animal. You'll find out soon enough. The corner of Hisashi's lips twitched, working overtime to keep his expression neutral. Now come on, your prize won't get any closer if you just stand there. Izuku nodded eagerly, grabbing Hisashi's hand and making his heart melt, while Tamura opted to just walk alongside him. The beginnings of teenage angst prevented him from showing any affection to his parents, and it was absolutely heartbreaking for Hisashi to experience. He attempted to lead the boys to the door at the end of the hallway but ended up being awkwardly pulled along by an excited, green-haired 8-year-old. Hisashi could barely contain himself when they finally reached the door, holding his breath to keep from spoiling the surprise as Izuku and Tamura pushed it open and stepped into the room, finally laying eyes on their reward. Daddy, Izuku said slowly, his hand trembling as he lifted it to point at the gift in the middle of the floor. What is that? That? Hisashi said, ushering his frozen sons further into the room, is your new dog. The boys didn't move, Izuku's jaw hanging open and body shaking while Tamura was squinting at the pet as if it would turn into something else. They stood there for so long that Hisashi began to worry that they didn't like it, but his fears were calmed when Izuku burst into tears, wrapping his arms around his dad's leg and sobbing out, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, Bunny. Go on, introduce yourself to your pet, you too, Tamura. And you'll need to name it as well." Neither boy moved, Izuku still sobbing in gratitude while Tamura continued to glare suspiciously at their new pet. "It's kind of ugly," Tamura stated, observing it like he didn't know what it was. "Now Tamura, it isn't polite to judge others simply based on outward appearance. Besides, it clearly falls under the 'so ugly it's cute' phenomenon." "I know what ugly cute is," the teen scoffed, "but that looks like it got hit by a truck." "No, 3 trucks. Nichan," Izuku chided, removing himself from Hisashi's leg to put his hands on his hips. "Mommy says you can't judge a book by its cover." "That's not a book, baby brother, and I'm not even sure it's an animal." The little boy huffed, turning his fierce gaze upon Hisashi. "Daddy, you gotta tell Nichan what kind of animal it is. I think it's a special kind of dog." Yes, of course. This is actually a very special dog, one that Dr. Garaki and myself have been working on for a long time. It's called a Nomu." "Wow," Izuku breathed out after a moment of silence. "You made it? That's amazing. How'd you do it?" "Why'd you make it so ugly?" Tamura said, earning a light slap from Izuku under the guise of, "Don't be mean to our pet." "Science doesn't always let us decide the appearance of our creations," Hisashi shrugged, walking over to the stationary Nomu. "This dog is part of a series of experiments I have been working on, one to observe how quirks interact and combine with each other. And in my defense, this is actually one of the nicer-looking Nomus. All the other ones look like they were dragged off the side of the road and left that way." That statement was true. Nearly every Nomo other than Kurogiri looked like horrendous monsters, with exposed brains, beaks with teeth, grotesque limbs, and sickly gray skin. This Nomu was designed specifically to look less like something that would give his son nightmares, being made from the bodies of various large animals. All of them were already dead when brought to the lab. Hisashi was a villain, but not an animal abuser, with some human parts, and looked somewhat like a cross between a dog, a horse, and a buffalo, possessing a noticeable tail, a stripe of fuzz running down its spine, and, most importantly, no exposed brain. "I think it looks great," Izuku declared, grabbing Tamura's arm to drag him closer to their pet Nomu. "Daddy, can I pet it?" "Of course you can," Hisashi smiled, placing a hand on Izuku's chest to prevent him from touching the creature just yet. "Just remember, it has some quirks in it. It might get sick if you take away its quirks, so try not to do that, okay?" "Okay. Can I ask what quirks it has?" "I'm glad you asked." Hisashi gestured for the boys to stand in front of the Nomu. "This one has a few quirks. It has standard strength and speed enhancers, and a minor regeneration quirk, not enough to regrow a new limb, but enough to stop the bleeding so we can take it to Garaki. It has another quirk called Bloodhound, which allows it to memorize the scents of 5 people, and it will always be able to track the scents of said people no matter how much they try to cover their scents. I've already given it both of your scents, your mother's and mine. The last one is called Glamour, which makes people unable to perceive the Nomu's true nature. Anyone passing by it will see it as a large dog, but the longer they're exposed to it, the more visible its true appearance will be." "It looks even weirder now that you told us that," Tamura grumbled, shifting side to side while looking at the creature. "It's like my brain keeps telling me not to look at it, and if I stare at it too long it starts looking all weird and glitched out." "I think it's got really fun quirks," Izuku said, finally reaching out to pet the massive animal. "We gotta give it a name." "Hellhound." Hisashi frowned at Tamura. "No names will swear words in them, your mother will kill me." "Fine. Nightmare Fuel." "That's too long," Izuku protested, moving from just petting the Nomu to also mushing his face against it. "What about Fluffy?" "That's a dog name." "We can't name it that, baby brother, it's not Fluffy or a dog." "Okay, maybe Spot?" "That's too boring," Tamura complained, shuffling closer to the creature to poke it. eyes widening at how surprisingly soft it was. That was also a very important requirement for its development, as Hisashi knew his sons liked soft things, before shoving his own face into its side. Oh, I got an idea. Izuku whipped around to face Hisashi. Daddy, remember that movie we watched? The one about the sisters that adopted the blue alien. Hisashi nodded, fondly remembering showing his sons Lilo and Stitch. Proper knowledge of pre-Quirk media was very important for their education and development. Well, the alien was an experiment too. And his name was Stitch, so what if we call our pet Stitches? Stitches, Tamura hummed, testing the name out. I like it. It works 'cause Dad had to use some stitches to make this thing. Hisashi smiled, pleased to see his sons finally warming up to their pet. Stitches it is. Now, the last lesson for today is basic dog commands. Stitches here can do practically anything, as long as it's not too complicated. Tamura, why don't you try giving it a command? In the end, the pet Nomu was a massive success, with Tamura and Izuku absolutely delighted to discover that their dog could already perform practically any trick imaginable, and it didn't take long for both of them to become increasingly fond of the massive beast. Thankfully, the Nomu behaved exactly as expected, not reacting when Izuku climbed all over it or when Tamura was less than gentle at poking and prodding it. Not only were they coming to love their dog, the data they were gathering would be incredibly useful for the doctor's future experiments. Taken! Izuku shouted, running to meet his best friend at the entrance to his home. Guess what? I got a dog. Come see. That's super cool, Izukin. Monoma ran inside after the green-haired boy. What kind of Izukin? Izuku turned around, noticing that the blonde had stopped in his tracks and had become rather pale. Taken, what did you ask? Are you sure that's a dog? Monoma was shaking as he looked at the dog, who was sitting unmoving in the middle of the floor, and sweat drops began to bead down his neck. Izuku beamed, completely oblivious to his friend's fear. Yeah, Stitches is a dog. Daddy said that he's a special kind of dog, one that Mommy isn't allergic to. Izukin, I have never seen a dog like that before. Why is it so big? There are lots of really big dogs like Stitches, Izuku said, pulling a resisting Monoma towards the Nomu, and Daddy said Stitches looked more like a dog before it got hit by a train, but Stitches is all okay now. Monoma's mouth moved without sound, but he eventually sighed and hesitantly moved to pet the maybe dog. As long as Izuku was happy, he would force himself to not pass out at the sight of his horrific pet. They definitely wouldn't be having pet playdates though. This monster would probably eat Inoki the second she started barking, and his little dog would definitely try to pick a fight. They say when a person is about to die, they see their life flash before their eyes, the highs and lows of their lifetime presented before them as a final overview of how they spent their years on Earth. As All for One was smashed through a wall by his greatest enemy, All Might, he suddenly found that the world had slowed down to a snail's pace, memories and images flashing through his mind as he flew through the air and down towards a dark alley. He had long pondered about this moment, decades worth of time merely sitting and thinking of what would be considered his most vivid memories. Obviously, there would be his early years, the memories of growing up with his beloved baby brother, Yoichi, two brothers who stuck by the other's side no matter what. Yoichi's betrayal would also be included, him fighting against his brother at every turn, spitting curses when his older brother put him in the vault, for his own good. The greatest mistake of his life, forcing a quirk upon his baby brother that would become one for all, played out vividly in his mind's eye, alongside the final fight and subsequent death of Yoichi. Those memories would undoubtedly be a part of his final montage of life. Is this it? Considering how much he thought about it, it should not have been so heart-wrenching to be presented with memories of his family. His first time meeting Inko when she represented a disgruntled business partner suing one of his legitimate businesses and instantly falling in love with her, the day he worked up the courage to ask for a date with her, and their wedding day. Something painful and boiling hot settled in his gut when he saw the day he brought Tamura home, his beloved Inko immediately fawning over the boy and doing everything she could to make him comfortable. The day Inko told him she was Pierre and the day their darling Izuku was born, his eyes green and wide and so full of love. Is this the day I die? He thought of every precious moment he had shared with his family, from monumental occasions like the first time Tamura called him dad or Izuku's first steps, to everyday occurrences that he had previously taken for granted, waking up to a beautiful wife and wonderful sons, getting to simply exist in the home they had worked hard to build. Every hug, every casual conversation, every night he could kiss his sons goodnight, fully expecting to see them the next day, each tender moment he could spend with the people he loved. No, I'm not ready. Tamura and his loyalty to his found family, working hard to keep his promise to be the greatest brother ever. Izuku, his never-ending drive to learn and his deep love for the people he held dear. And Inko, the woman that had stolen the villain's heart, breaking every idea he had of mindlessly stealing every quirk on Earth and taking over the world. The woman that had torn down his walls and filled his life with a warmth he had never felt before, who had given him every single thing that he now held dear, who had changed him in so many ways that he had yet to still realize it all. I'm not ready. All for One's eyes snapped open and the world was kicked back into normal speed, crashing into the pavement of the dingy alley. He could hear All Might shout something, but he paid no mind to it, scrambling to his feet and bolting deeper into the maze of cramped spaces and dark shadows. He used quirks to set false trails, heart pounding while he pulled out his phone, thankfully not completely destroyed. Nokia still made indestructible phones after all, and pressed Kurojire's contact information. Master. Kurojire, come to my location at once and take me to my home. All for One hissed, pulling away from the phone to inhale deeply and blow a stream of fire from his mouth. Less than a second later, the black and purple warp gate opened in the alley, and the villain exhaled another deep breath of fire before leaping inside. Master, you're injured dash. That doesn't matter. All for One bellowed, despite feeling immeasurable pain all over his body, several bones were definitely broken, and ran into his living room, darting towards his office. Kurojire, hurry and follow me. The warper didn't respond, noticing the gravity of the situation despite his confusion, opting to swiftly trail behind his panicking master. Hisashi. Inko stepped out of their bedroom, having heard the commotion. What's wrong? You're hurt. Inko, the villain ran towards his wife, grabbing her shoulders as though his life depended on it. Inko, it's time. The green-haired woman tilted her head in confusion, but realization quickly washed over her face. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Inko, please. We don't have much time if all of us intend to make it to tomorrow unscathed. Inko steeled her eyes, nodding sharply. Tell me what I need to do. Hisashi nearly sighed in relief, but there was no time for that. Instead, he took his wife's hand and ran with her, flinging open the doors to his office. Inko, we're going to make sure that I die tonight. Izuku could sleep through anything, just like his big brother, but shouts and running footsteps weren't just anything. He slowly sat up in his bed, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes and trying to clear the fog from his mind. Kurojire, hurry and follow me. His dad had lots of feelings and showed almost all of them, but the one emotion Izuku had never seen on the large man was pure, unadulterated fear. But hearing his dad, someone who was unshakable, fearless, the strongest person Izuku knew, shout in fear? It was like ice had flooded Izuku's entire body, his stomach dropping like he was falling from the tallest mountain. He ripped off his blankets, knees buckling slightly when his feet hit the floor, and stumbled out of his room as fast as he could, mind filled with nothing but why does Daddy sound scared? Something is wrong. I have to help. Daddy sounds afraid. He's scared. I'm scared. Izuku burst into the hallway at the same time that his older brother did, the blue-haired teenager fumbling to put his gloves on, his red eyes wide as he took in the situation unfolding before them. Kurojire, tell the doctor to give me one of the failed test subjects. Their dad shouted, limping quickly around the house, with Mom equally frazzled while digging through stacks of papers. Even Kurojire, with no discernible facial features, somehow looked like he had been spooked by something, and it did nothing to comfort the children. Izuku felt like the air around him was turning into jelly, suddenly finding it hard to breathe as the chaos unfolded right in front of them, and his heart started to race like he had been running for hours. Everything was just so wrong. Daddy never gets scared like this, Mommy never looks so panicked, And they definitely don't shout about scary things so loud. His head was spinning, he couldn't see, he just wanted everything to be quiet. Tamura finally managed to get his gloves on properly, but he still didn't understand exactly what was going on. He knew that Dad was supposed to be away tonight getting more supplies for his boring science stuff, but the fact that he was back so early meant that things didn't go well. He wanted to go ask what happened, but the way his parents looked made him think that wasn't a good idea. He was further discouraged from approaching the adults at the sound of rapid, short breaths, a sound that made his hair stand on edge, the sound of his baby brother about to have a panic attack. "No, no, no baby brother," Tamura said, diving across the hallway to pull the little boy into his arms. "It's okay, let's take some deep breaths together, okay? Copy Nichan, you love copying me." The teen exaggerated his breathing, maneuvering the younger boy so his head was pressed against Tamura's chest, covering his exposed ear with a gloved hand to block out the sound of their parents shouting. Tamura didn't know how long he sat there helping his brother to calm down, but once his breathing had somewhat evened out, Tamura was quick to carry him into his bedroom, shutting the door to muffle as much noise as he could. "It's all right, baby brother," Tamura cooed in his raspy voice, wrapping his softest blanket around the trembling boy. "Nothing can stop Mom and Dad. They're the strongest after all." Piling on blanket after blanket, Tamura continued to fill the uncomfortable silence with random talk, abandoning the blatant lies that everything was okay, holding his baby brother tight while rambling on about game strategies and lore. When the shouting behind the door got louder, so too would the teen's story, bursts of enthusiasm covering up the constant reminders that something was wrong, very wrong. He talked until his voice was raspier than normal, throat dry and each word feeling like broken glass, but it was all worth it when baby brother stopped trembling and burrowed himself further into Tamura's side. They both knew that sleep would not come to them again, the mere idea of it impossible in the face of something so terrifying, yet neither removed themselves from the tiny bubble of safety they had built with blankets and comforting hugs. As their world came crashing down around them, they silently resolved to stay by each other's side, no matter what might possibly try to separate them. After all, that's what brothers do. Hisashi grimaced at the loss of such a good quirk, but he did not hesitate in plunging it into the body of the failed Nomo before him. Sinking black spikes into the gray mass to activate the physical transformation quirk, he forced the Nomu to take on the form that All Might would soon face, one that looked vastly different from the man known as Shigaraki Hisashi, and jammed his helmet onto the creature now possessing his likeness. He had never been more glad to have that helmet, even though he thought it looked a bit ridiculous when he acquired it 3 decades ago and was so thankful it was so extravagant despite its sole purpose being to filter out dust and pollen so he wouldn't succumb to spring allergies at an embarrassing time. "Kurogyri, drop this at Sector F5 in 1 minute, he barked out the order. "I will direct the illusions to gather there at once. Inko, do you have eyes on All Might?" Inko nodded, never removing her eyes from the screen in front of her. "Yes, he's chasing the illusion moving through sectors A6 and B7. The fires are currently keeping him contained in that square, and the old man has just caught up to the illusion in D1. Good. I will make sure that they reach the target at the same time by using the fires to control the paths they can take." "Hisashi," Inko's voice was firm yet betrayed her worry, "please be careful. You promised to come home tonight." He stopped mid-step, turning around to stand in front of his wife, eyes drinking in her hands ringing together, the crease in her brow she only got when she was stressed, and the moisture in her eyes that threatened to spill over at any moment. With a sigh, he gently held her face in his hand, moving his thumb against her cheekbone as he often did to soothe her worries. "Inko, my love," his voice cracked against his wishes, "I always keep my promises, and I swear that I will come back to you." A warp gate opened behind Hisashi, and without giving his wife the chance to respond, he took a step backward and found himself in the maze of alleys that were now engulfed in flames. Blending into the shadows was easy with a transparency quirk, darting towards the eye of the oncoming storm as fast as possible. The shouts of the enraged heroes echoed all around him as he slipped around unseen, heightening the sense of urgency permeating Hisashi's bones, and he was all too glad to finally hunker down in the window of an evacuated apartment complex, sending a mental apology to the people who lived here for what was about to happen. A warp gate opened and deposited the Nomu wearing his visage right as the illusions of All for One entered the area and began to slink into his doppelganger's body. Mere moments later, All Might burst through a crumbling wall, eyes filled with fury and jaw clenched so tightly Hisashi thought the hero's teeth would crack. All for One, All Might roared, "Come and face me! This ends tonight." It will end tonight, the villain thought, sking in a breath to calm his nerves, but not in a way either of us ever expected it to. Kurogyari appeared in the small apartment, sharing a silent nod with his master, and opened a portal, small enough to go completely unnoticed among the rubble and fires outside. Hisashi inhaled once again and raised his hands, tying a mental string to the Nomu outside, wincing slightly at the headache forming as a result of the puppeteer quirk being used. All Might, All for One's voice echoed through the decimated area, his movements controlled and calculated. "I agree. This ends tonight, although I regret to inform you it won't work in your favor." With a flick of his wrist, the villain shot a blast of air towards the hero, Quirk, air cannon, possessed by the Nomu, forcefully activated via the portal hidden behind the villain's replacement, which was avoided easily by the hero, although the cloud of dust stirred up by the wind did cause the hero to cough harshly. All Might growled, lunging forward, fist pulled back and ready to throw a lethal punch. All for One stepped to the side just a moment too late, his left arm catching the full brunt of the blow, enhanced durability doing little to cushion the impact. Hisashi grunted as his head throbbed, noting that physical harm caused to his puppet worsened his budding headache. Not ideal, but this pain was much better than actually being beaten to a pulp. Detroit smash. How foolish. All for One laughed, sending the impact of the attack back on the hero. One would think you had learned to do more than just punch things. Come on, be a little more creative. The taunts served to further anger the hero as the blonde man immediately rocketed forward, throwing a barrage of punches at All for One. Hisashi felt sweat drip down his neck, the effort of maintaining the puppeteer quirk while constantly activating more quirks within the Nomo feeling like a sharp, stabbing pain all through his body. All for One stumbled backward, reeling from the barrage of punches, raising his arm and transforming his fingers into sharp, black tendrils. The hero, not noticing the change in his enemy's hand, darted forward for another attack. Once All Might was close enough, All for One jammed the tendrils into the hero's side, plunging them deep inside the hero, twisting them and undoubtedly shredding the man's internal organs. Blood spewed from the hero's mouth, his large hand clutching the hole in his side, punching All for One below the belt in an uncharacteristic display of desperation, one that caused the villain to fall to his knees, most likely due to a broken hip. "I will avenge my master," All Might grunted, shifting his stance into something more stable. All for One's arm began to ripple, muscles bulging and enlarging into something grotesque and massive. United dash. Hisashi dropped to his knees, head pounding and back soaked in sweat, preparing for the final attack. States of dash. He swallowed down bile rising in his throat, gritting his teeth and ignoring the throbbing pain in his head. Smash. Now. Hisashi shouted, ripping nearly every quirk from the Nomu, Kurogyari closing his gate and detonating the previously planted explosives right beneath All for One's feet right as the full force of One for All decimated the villain and surrounding area. The warper was quick to catch Hisashi, who had collapsed from the exhaustion and pain, warping them back to the family's home just seconds before the might of the final blow completely destroyed the apartment complex they had hidden in. The body, Hisashi grunted, eyes screwed shut, hand covering his forehead. Kurogyari swiftly complied while he scrambled towards a trash can, stomach emptying itself of its contents, the sickly odor making his headache worse. Hisashi! Inko's voice was soft, quiet, concerned, and downright soothing to her husband's ears. Did it work? The security cameras were destroyed at the beginning of the fight. He groaned in response, physically unable to answer until he had confirmation from his right-hand man that it was safe. He couldn't speak, think, even breathe until he was sure. Master, Kurogiri's voice made Hisashi feel like he had been dunked in ice water, the air too thick to be drawn into his lungs as he waited for the Cloudman's next words. The combined force of All Might's final attack and the explosion has mangled the body beyond recognition. All Might is being airlifted to a hospital, and the officers on scene have declared the mystery villain he fought dead. The Warper paused, making his next statement feel even weightier. All for One is dead. Tamura had lost all feeling in his legs after the first hour of letting his baby brother sit in his lap, but he didn't dare move the little boy out of his grip. The shouting had gone down significantly, although the atmosphere was still unbearably tense, and baby brother's panic had lessened along with the decrease in noise. Tamura had told every story he knew, recounted the plot of countless video games, and was even reciting philosophies he had been learning in his lessons, all to fill the suffocating silence looming around the nest of blankets surrounding them. His voice would be completely gone tomorrow, but that didn't matter when his baby brother needed him, needed to be comforted by his big brother, needed someone to hold him and let him know that everything would be okay. And then the bubble shattered when the faint sound of Mom crying ripped through the silence. The little boy in Tamura's arms began to shake again, causing the teen to tighten his arms around him. Mom cried about lots of things. They both knew that, so this could be either good tears or bad tears. It should be easy to stand up, walk out of the room, and ask her why she was crying, but Tamura felt like there was an invisible rope keeping him rooted to his spot on his bed. The tension was so thick it made the air feel like it was made of thick jelly, time moving impossibly slow as Mom's crying became slightly louder and footsteps approached his door. He longed to reach out, to decay the wrongness infiltrating the safety of his home, anything to calm the storm in his heart and soothe the little boy near tears in his arms. The footsteps stopped and Tamura didn't dare breathe, not when the doorknob turned, not when Mom walked in and sat next to them, especially not when Dad limped in behind her with an ice pack pressed against his forehead. Tamura, Izuku, Dad choked the words out, dropping the ice pack and stumbling forward, engulfing the boys in a tight hug. My baby boys, I love you so much. The tension snapped in an instant. Fresh tears started rolling down Tamura's cheeks and Izuku's sobs racked his tiny body with shudders, both melting into the safety that only their father could provide. It only took one sentence for them to know that everything was going to be okay. It would always be okay when their family was with them. The little family sat there for hours, comforting each other in silence, until one by one they all fell asleep, still huddled together in their cuddle pile. They would speak later, long after the fires burnt out, the same fires that had ended All for One mere hours earlier. It seemed a retirement party was in order, but that could wait. For now, the Shigaraki Midoriya family was content to just be together, as the family they always were and always would be.